It all began on a late afternoon as I was driving home from my parents' house. I had been there for several weeks, helping to finish a long overdue renovation project. It was hard work, but satisfying in its own way. My hands were still sore from handling tools, and my mind was on getting home, having a hot meal, and finally putting my feet up. As I approached the driveway, something felt off. The usual calm of the neighborhood was replaced with faint sounds of chaos coming from inside my house. It wasn't clear what was going on, but it wasn't normal. I parked the car and stepped out, my senses heightened. As I entered the house, the noises became more distinct, thuds, scraping, and something that sounded like distant yelling. My first instinct was to ensure safety. I quickly moved to the drawer where I kept my pistol. A cautious man by nature, I believed in being prepared. With the gun firmly in hand, I took deliberate steps into the living room. What I saw there stopped me in my tracks. The place looked like a storm had passed through it. Furniture was pushed aside, wallpaper peeled off in strips, and the usual orderliness I maintained was completely gone. For a moment, I thought the house had been ransacked. "What is going on here?" I called out, my voice steady but firm. My wife appeared from the kitchen, looking oddly composed despite the destruction around her. She didn't seem alarmed at all, which was even more confusing. "There's a problem we need to fix," she began, as if this explanation would suffice. I lowered the pistol, still scanning the room. She pointed at the walls, gesturing to the torn wallpaper and scratched surfaces. "The house is in terrible shape," she said. "I decided it's time for a full renovation." Her tone was matter-of-fact, like she was talking about rearranging furniture, not tearing apart the entire house. "You decided?" I asked, my disbelief evident. "I just spent weeks finishing up a renovation at my parents' place, and now you're telling me I'm walking into another project." She nodded enthusiastically, as if this was exciting news. "But this isn't simple," I continued. "A renovation like this takes planning, money, and a proper team. It's not something I can just throw together on my own." "Relax," she said, brushing off my concerns. "I've already thought this through. We're meeting someone tomorrow who can handle everything." Her confidence was unsettling. I'm a man who believes in doing things right, not rushing into decisions. "Who exactly are we meeting?" I asked, my skepticism clear. "A friend of mine. Her husband is a professional. He handles renovations, designs, projects, the whole package," she explained. "Is he an engineer? Does he have a team?" I pressed, trying to gauge how legitimate this sounded. She rolled her eyes slightly, as if my questioning was unnecessary. "Yes, he has a team. He's done incredible work on my friend's house. You'll see for yourself. Don't worry about the details, they're all sorted." I wasn't entirely convinced. Renovations weren't just about skill, they were about trust and accountability. But she seemed adamant. "Tomorrow is your day off, isn't it?" she continued, shifting the conversation back to logistics. "We're meeting them first thing. It's an important meeting, so I need you to make a good impression." She said this with a sense of finality, as if the decision had already been made and my role was merely to follow through. I stared at the mess around me, feeling a mix of frustration and resignation. Whatever she had planned, it seemed I had little choice but to go along with it. At the very least, I'd see what this so-called professional had to offer. The next morning, we set off early, heading to a small town where my wife's friend lived. It was an unusually long drive, made worse by my growing apprehension. She had mentioned this friend before, though not in the most flattering terms. The woman had a reputation for being unreliable, someone who jumped from one relationship to another and didn't hesitate to throw others under the bus when it suited her. It baffled me why my wife thought it was a good idea to involve her in something as significant as our home renovation. When we arrived, the house was modest but well maintained. My wife rang the doorbell, and within moments, the door swung open. I recognized the woman instantly. She hadn't changed much since the last time I saw her, though there was something oddly subdued about her demeanor. Gone was the brazen attitude I remembered. She greeted us warmly, even cheerfully, as if she hadn't spent years cultivating a reputation for being difficult. My wife nudged me to step inside, though I hesitated, shooting her a look that said everything I was thinking. "She's different now," my wife whispered, rolling her eyes at my reluctance. I followed her inside, still skeptical. The woman led us to the living room, offering us coffee and asking us to make ourselves comfortable. It was bizarre. The last time I'd seen her, she wouldn't have thought twice about dismissing someone outright. Now, she was practically the picture of hospitality. I sat down but didn't relax, keeping my guard up. I wasn't about to let my past impressions cloud my judgment entirely, but I wasn't convinced of her supposed transformation either. As we waited, I turned to my wife. "Are you sure you want to trust her?" "She's not exactly known for reliability," I said quietly. My wife sighed, clearly exasperated. "People change," she said. "Ever since she got married, she's turned over a new leaf. Just wait and see." Her confidence annoyed me, but I decided to keep my thoughts to myself. It wasn't worth an argument, not yet, anyway. Soon after, her husband joined us. He was an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with an air of authority about him. He greeted us politely and introduced himself. Despite my reservations about his wife, I couldn't deny that he seemed competent and professional. We began discussing the renovation project, and my wife wasted no time outlining her vision. She spoke enthusiastically about transforming our home, her excitement evident in every word. I mostly listened, occasionally chiming in with practical concerns about costs and timelines. The man nodded along, taking notes and asking relevant questions. He seemed to know his stuff, which was reassuring. "I'll bring my team over on Sunday to take a look at the house," he said. "We'll evaluate the scope of work and give you a detailed plan afterward." His confidence was contagious, even if I still had my doubts about the whole arrangement. My wife beamed, clearly thrilled that things were moving forward. I remained reserved, unwilling to get too optimistic until I saw results. As the conversation wrapped up, he added a final note. "Just a heads up," he said. "My team is unique. They're young guys, full of energy, and sometimes their behavior can be a bit, let's say, unorthodox. If they say or do anything that seems out of line, don't take it personally. They're good at what they do, and that's what matters." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. My wife seemed unbothered, nodding along as if it were a minor detail. We thanked them for their time and hospitality before heading back home. The drive felt shorter this time, but my mind was still racing. There were too many variables, too many unknowns. My wife, however, seemed perfectly at ease, already talking about how great everything would turn out. I kept my thoughts to myself, deciding to wait and see how Sunday's visit would unfold. The last day of my weekend began earlier than expected. I woke up to the sound of my wife tearing down wallpaper in the living room. She had been at it since dawn, the noise of ripping paper echoing through the house. Groaning, I rolled out of bed and realized I hadn't even had time to wash up when there was a sharp knock at the door. Still in my boxers, I quickly threw on some clothes and went to see who it was. What greeted me was nothing short of a spectacle. Standing on my porch was a group of young men, looking more like they belonged on a runway than at a renovation site. One of them, dressed in a beige designer suit, seemed to be the self-proclaimed leader. Behind him was a mix of casually dressed guys, each carrying an air of nonchalance. Before I could even get a word in, they barged in, their voices filling the space with loud chatter and crude jokes. Some of their remarks were directed at the state of the house, others at the torn wallpaper. It was enough to make my blood boil. "Hey, keep it professional," I snapped at one of them who had gone too far. My voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. The leader quickly stepped in, apologizing on behalf of the group. "Don't mind them," he said with a sheepish smile. "They're just excited to get started." I didn't buy the excuse but decided not to escalate things further. Instead, I crossed my arms and waited for them to begin their assessment. The team spread out, examining every corner of the house with surprising efficiency. Despite their initial behavior, it was clear they knew what they were doing. My wife joined them, eagerly pointing out areas she wanted renovated. "Don't forget to check the basement," she said, her enthusiasm borderline contagious. I frowned. "Why the basement?" I asked. "It's just a storage space for junk." "What's the point?" She waved me off with a vague explanation about having special plans for the area, promising to share the details later. I didn't press her, but made a mental note to follow up. As the group moved downstairs, I stayed close behind, observing their every move. The basement, like I said, was cluttered with old boxes and forgotten items. Yet, the team seemed unfazed. They measured walls, checked the flooring, and even discussed potential layouts among themselves. Their professionalism in this moment was a stark contrast to their earlier antics. Still, I couldn't ignore the hushed conversations and occasional glances they exchanged. Something about it felt off, but I chose to let it slide for now. After thoroughly inspecting the house, they regrouped in the living room to discuss their findings. The leader presented their estimate, and I was genuinely surprised. The cost was far lower than I had anticipated. "Why so affordable?" I asked, skeptical of the offer. "We're not overhauling the structure," he explained. "It's mostly cosmetic work, plus a few furniture upgrades. Nothing too complicated." His reasoning made sense, but I remained cautious. My wife, however, seemed thrilled. She nodded enthusiastically, agreeing to their terms without hesitation. Before we wrapped up, the leader added one final detail. "Usually, we take payment upfront," he said. "But since your wife is a friend of my wife, we'll handle the legalities and payments after the work is completed. Does that work for you?" His offer was unexpected but intriguing. The idea of paying only after seeing results was appealing. It showed confidence in their ability to deliver, which I respected. After a brief pause, I extended my hand. "All right," I said. "You've got a deal." After that day, the renovation work began in earnest. Each morning, I left for work as usual, while my wife stayed home to oversee the progress. The team of builders arrived promptly and got to work, their noisy presence a constant reminder that the house was undergoing a transformation. Days turned into weeks, and I could see changes taking shape. The living room looked brighter, the kitchen more modern, and even the upstairs bedrooms began to feel refreshed. My wife seemed to thrive in her role as the on-site manager, keeping everything on schedule and making sure the workers stuck to the plan. One evening, I came home exhausted from a long day at the office. The house was quieter than usual. The workers had already packed up and left for the day, leaving behind a faint scent of sawdust and fresh paint. As I walked through the house, I couldn't help but notice how much progress had been made. However, my thoughts kept circling back to one thing, the basement. I had completely forgotten about my wife's earlier mention of wanting to renovate it. It wasn't until I saw a stack of materials by the basement door that I remembered. Curious, I called out to her. She appeared moments later, still holding a clipboard filled with notes. "What's the deal with the basement?" I asked. "Why are we even bothering with it? It's just a place for storing junk." She smiled, clearly anticipating the question. "I've got big plans for that space," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "Think about it, we've been using it as a dumping ground, but it has so much potential. I want to turn it into a special area, something unique." I raised an eyebrow. "Special how?" She launched into a description of her vision, painting a picture of cozy furniture, an enormous bookshelf, and mood lighting in rich, warm tones. "It'll be a perfect retreat," she said. "A place where we can relax, read, or even entertain guests." It sounded ambitious, almost too ambitious. "And you're sure this is worth the effort?" I asked. She nodded confidently. "Absolutely. But to make it happen, I need to take care of a few details with someone who's helping me finalize the design." That caught my attention. "Who are you meeting?" I asked, narrowing my eyes slightly. Just someone who's helping me bring the idea to life, she replied vaguely. Don't worry about it. It's all under control. Her nonchalant attitude didn't sit entirely well with me, but I decided not to push. She had been managing the project competently so far, and I didn't want to micromanage. So, when do I get to see this masterpiece? I joked, trying to lighten the mood. She laughed. Soon enough, she said. But for now, I need you to handle something important. Tomorrow, the builders will be back to start working on the basement. I have a meeting in the afternoon and might be late. Can you keep an eye on things while I'm gone? I hesitated for a moment, considering her request. Supervising the workers wasn't exactly how I wanted to spend my evening, but it seemed reasonable enough. All right, I said. I'll make sure everything runs smoothly. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek before heading back to her notes. That night, as I sat in the living room, I couldn't help but think about the project. The house was shaping up nicely, and while I had my reservations about the basement, I trusted her judgment. For now, my focus was on making sure the workers did their job properly. Whatever she had planned for the space, I'd find out soon enough. The next day, I got up early, ready to take on the task. As my wife prepared to leave for her meeting, she reminded me once again. Keep an eye on them, she said. They're good, but they need supervision. I nodded, determined to do my part. Whatever her grand vision for the basement was, I'd make sure it started on the right foot. The next day, I arrived home after a long shift at work. The house was quiet, just as my wife had warned me it would be. She was out, and the builders had already arrived to continue their work on the basement. As I stepped inside, I could hear voices from downstairs. At first, I thought nothing of it, just the usual noise of people talking on the job. But then, I caught fragments of their conversation, and what I heard made my blood run cold. They weren't discussing work. Their words were vulgar and laced with inappropriate remarks about my wife. The kind of talk that no man would tolerate about someone he cared for. At that moment, any sense of patience I had left evaporated. Without hesitation, I made my way downstairs. The group fell silent as I entered, clearly caught off guard by my sudden presence. I walked straight up to one of them, a young guy with a cocky demeanor who seemed to be the ringleader of their crude jokes. Grabbing him by the collar, I lifted him just enough to make my point clear. You want to repeat that? I asked, my voice steady but filled with unmistakable anger. His face went pale, and he stammered, "Man, you must have misheard. We weren't talking about your wife. It's just someone with the same name, that's all." I let him go, but my glare lingered. "Watch your mouth," I said firmly. "Next time, there won't be a warning." The room was tense as I turned and walked away. I didn't need to say more, they got the message. As I headed back upstairs, I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't care. Respect was non-negotiable. Later that evening, my wife returned home, looking as cheerful as ever. She immediately began talking about the progress the builders had made, oblivious to the confrontation that had taken place earlier. I interrupted her to explain what had happened, recounting the incident in detail. Her reaction was a mix of frustration and exasperation. "Why is it that every time I leave you alone, you end up in some kind of standoff?" she asked, rolling her eyes. "And what was I supposed to do?" I shot back. "Let them talk like that without consequence." She sighed. "No, but maybe next time, handle it a bit more diplomatically. We still need these guys to finish the job. The last thing I want is for them to sabotage the work out of spite." I understood her point, but I wasn't about to apologize for defending her honor. "Fine," I said, "but they're on thin ice as far as I'm concerned." After dinner, she changed the subject, her tone lightening as she shared some news. "By the way," she said, "I spoke to the husband of my friend earlier. He mentioned the incident and asked if everything was okay. I assured him it's under control, but it looks like the builders might have said something to him, too." I wasn't surprised. Gossip traveled fast in situations like these. Still, I was glad the matter hadn't escalated further. Before heading to bed, she mentioned another update about the project. "So, there's someone coming in a few days," she began. "He's going to help with a graphic visualization of what the basement will look like. Apparently, he's an expert, but also unique." She gave me a knowing look, as if preparing me for someone eccentric. "Just a heads up so you're not caught off guard." I nodded, taking her words in stride. At this point, nothing about this renovation could surprise me. "All right," I said. "Let's see what this guy has to offer." Another weekend rolled around, and I was at home trying to catch up on some much-needed rest. My wife had been out for most of the morning, running errands for the renovation project. When she finally returned, she wasn't alone. She walked in with a man who, to put it mildly, was unlike anyone I'd ever seen. He was covered in tattoos, with piercings in places I didn't even think were possible. His style was loud, almost deliberately provocative, and it immediately set the tone for what was going to be a very unusual interaction. The man introduced himself with an overly casual demeanor, extending a hand as if we'd been friends for years. "Your wife's told me about the basement project," he said, his voice dripping with enthusiasm. "So, have you heard the full plan yet?" I shook his hand reluctantly and replied, "Not entirely." My wife stood nearby, watching with a mix of amusement and anticipation as he led the way down to the basement. Once downstairs, he pulled out a high-end tablet and began taking pictures of the space from every angle. His movements were quick and efficient, clearly practiced. "All right, let me show you what I've got in mind," he said, pulling up a digital sketchpad on the screen. Within minutes, he had drawn a detailed layout of the room. He pointed to one corner. "Here, we'll install a custom-designed intimate chair." Then, moving to the opposite side, he added, "And over here, a large crossfall, well, you get the idea." I froze, staring at him in disbelief. "Stop," I said, cutting him off. "What is this supposed to be?" He looked at me as if I'd just asked a silly question. "It's an intimate space," he said matter-of-factly. "Your wife was very clear about wanting something unique, something liberating." His explanation didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. I turned to my wife, who was standing silently, watching my reaction with a sheepish smile. "Is this true?" I asked her, trying to keep my composure. She shrugged. "Why not?" she said. "I thought it'd be something fun, something different. I'm doing this for us, you know. To spice things up a bit." Her nonchalant attitude only added to my frustration. "I thought this was supposed to be a cozy reading room," I said. "You know, bookshelves, a couch, something simple and comfortable. This is not what I had in mind." She stepped closer, her tone softening. "Look," she said. "You've been working so hard, and I just wanted to do something special for us. It's not like it's set in stone. If you really don't want it, we can rethink the design." Her attempt to pacify me was partially effective. I sighed, deciding it wasn't worth a fight. "Fine," I said. "But let's keep it reasonable. No surprises." The man wrapped up his presentation quickly after that, sensing the tension in the room. As he packed up his things, he complimented my wife on her vision and assured her the final design would be perfect. I wasn't convinced, but I kept my opinions to myself. As he left, my wife walked him to the door, thanking him for his time and effort. When she returned, she brought up another topic. "By the way," she said, "the lead builder wants to talk to you about something important. He's stopping by tomorrow. I'm not sure what it's about, but he said it's crucial." I raised an eyebrow, curious, but not overly concerned. "All right," I said. "We'll see what he has to say." It was another long day at work when I got home to find the lead builder waiting for me. His expression was serious, and I could tell right away that something wasn't right. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside. Without wasting time, he laid it out plainly. The costs for the basement renovation had spiraled beyond the original estimate. "Your wife updated the project," he explained, "and it's a lot more extensive now. Unfortunately, this means the total cost is significantly higher than we initially discussed. He named the figure, and I stood there in stunned silence, trying to process the number. Before I could respond, my wife appeared in the doorway. Her face was a mix of worry and determination. She must have overheard the conversation because she immediately began pleading her case. "Look, I know it's more than we planned," she said, "but just think about how amazing it's going to be when it's finished. We're already halfway there. The living room and kitchen are practically done. This is the home we've always dreamed of." I raised a hand to stop her. "Let me think," I said firmly. Turning to the builder, I added, "Can we pause the construction for a couple of days? I need time to figure out how we're going to handle this." He nodded, understanding my position. "No problem," he said. "We'll hold off until you're ready." With that, he left, leaving me and my wife to sort through the mess. Once we were alone, she started again. "Please," she said, her voice soft and almost pleading. "I know it's a lot, but just imagine how beautiful it will be. This is for us, for our future. We've already come so far. If we stop now, all this work will be for nothing." I could see the hope in her eyes, but her words only added to my frustration. "You do realize," I said, "that I'm the one paying for all of this? It's my job that's funding your dream house, not yours." She didn't back down. If anything, she doubled down, painting a picture of how perfect everything would be once the renovations were complete. "You're always saying you want a comfortable home to come back to," she argued. "This is it. This is our chance to make that happen. Don't you think it's worth the extra effort?" Her persistence was exhausting, but she wasn't wrong. The renovations were already underway, and stopping now would mean wasting all the time and money we'd already invested. That night, I stayed up late, running the numbers in my head and considering my options. By morning, I had made up my mind. If we were going to push forward with this, I needed a way to bring in more income to cover the additional costs. At work, I approached my supervisor to discuss opportunities for extra assignments or projects. To my surprise, he had an immediate suggestion. "There's a week-long business trip coming up," he said. "It's not glamorous, but the pay is triple the usual rate. If you're interested, it's yours." The decision wasn't difficult. A week away from home would be inconvenient, but the financial benefit was too good to pass up. "I'll take it," I said without hesitation. Arrangements were quickly made, and I left the office feeling a mix of relief and determination. At least now, I had a plan to tackle the mounting expenses. When I got home, I sat my wife down to explain the situation. "I found a way to make this work," I told her. "I'm taking on a short-term assignment that'll bring in the extra money we need. It means I'll be away for a week, but it'll cover the costs of the new project." Her face lit up with relief and excitement. "Thank you," she said, throwing her arms around me. "I promise you won't regret this." For the first time in days, I felt like we were finally moving in the right direction. The day finally came when the renovation team was scheduled to return to continue their work. I got home from the office later than usual, tired and ready to relax, but what greeted me left me both puzzled and annoyed. The builders were scattered around the house, some shirtless, others wearing shorts so short they might as well have been underwear. I stared for a moment, trying to make sense of the scene, before heading inside to find my wife. "What's going on?" I asked her, gesturing toward the half-dressed workers. She didn't seem fazed. "Oh, they said it's too hot to work in full clothes," she explained casually. "I told them it's fine as long as they're getting the job done." "What's the harm?" Her tone was light, almost dismissive, but it only made my discomfort grow. This wasn't the kind of environment I wanted in my home. I decided not to argue, though the situation nagged at me. It felt like one more thing in a growing list of oddities surrounding this renovation. Instead, I focused on what I needed to share with her. "By the way," I said, "I got confirmation about my work trip. I'll be leaving in a week and gone for about 4 days." She nodded, seemingly unbothered. "That's perfect timing," she said. "By then, the basement should be nearly finished." All that'll be left is installing the furniture. The week went by faster than I expected. The builders continued their work, and I busied myself preparing for the trip. On the day of my departure, I gave my wife a quick rundown of what she might need to handle while I was gone. She assured me everything would be fine, and I left, trying to push aside the lingering unease I felt about the project. For the first couple of days, things seemed normal enough. I checked in with her a few times, but our conversations were brief. She seemed distracted, and then, by the third day, she stopped answering her phone altogether. Initially, I chalked it up to her being busy with the builders or other errands. But by the evening, my frustration had turned into concern. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then, as if on cue, my phone rang. It was my neighbor. "Hey," he said, his tone cautious. "I know you're out of town, but I thought you should know something. Your wife mentioned the renovation, right?" I confirmed, wondering where this was going. "Well," he continued, "I've noticed something odd. Usually, the workers leave in the evening, but for the past 3 nights, their trucks have been parked outside late into the night. I thought maybe they were just working overtime, but considering, the argument you had with them, I figured it's worth mentioning." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind raced as I tried to process what he was saying. "You're sure about this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rising anger. He assured me he was. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," he added, but it seemed strange. "I thought you'd want to know." After the call ended, I sat there in silence, my thoughts spiraling. Everything started to click: my wife's distracted behavior, the missed calls, and now this. It was too much to ignore. I needed to get back home and find out what was really going on. Without wasting a moment, I began planning how to cut my trip short and return earlier than expected. Whatever was happening, I wasn't going to sit idly by and let it continue unchecked. The next morning, my wife called me, her tone cheerful and upbeat. "The furniture has arrived," she said. "There's not much left to do now." I told her I'd be home a day or 2 later than expected, blaming work for the delay. "That's fine," she replied. "Everything should be finished by then." Her casual response didn't ease my growing suspicion, but I kept my thoughts to myself. The moment the call ended, I started making plans to return home earlier than she expected. I wrapped up my work commitments as quickly as possible and drove home that same evening. When I pulled up to the house, the builders' trucks were still parked outside. It was late, far past the usual hours they worked. My unease deepened as I stepped out of the car and walked toward the house. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in, moving quietly through the entryway. Near the basement door, I noticed a strange puddle of liquid on the floor. It didn't look like water, and I couldn't immediately place what it was. My instincts told me to stay cautious. Slowly, I descended the basement stairs, careful not to make any noise. What I saw when I reached the bottom was beyond anything I could have imagined. My wife, along with the builders, was caught in an act that left no room for misinterpretation. For a moment, I simply stood there, frozen in shock. Then, I pulled out my phone and began recording. None of them noticed me, too engrossed in their actions to sense my presence. Once I had enough footage, I turned and walked back upstairs, my mind racing. Anger surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. Losing control wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I came up with a plan. I locked the basement door from the outside, securing it with the key. Then, I left the key in the lock, ensuring they couldn't open it from their side. For the next few hours, the house was eerily quiet. But eventually, the banging started. Fists pounded on the basement door, followed by muffled shouts. The door stuck, someone yelled. "What's going on?" Their panic grew as time passed. I sat in the living room, waiting, my mind already planning my next move. When the noise from the basement reached a fever pitch, I walked to the hallway and called out. "The door's not stuck," I said loudly enough for them to hear. "It's locked." "You're not going anywhere." Their protests grew louder, but I ignored them. Instead, I gathered all the clothes they had left in the living room and threw them into the garbage bin outside. They wouldn't be needing them anytime soon. The next day, after a full 24 hours of leaving them locked up, I called the police. "There are intruders in my house," I told the dispatcher. "I caught them in the act and locked them in the basement. Can you send someone over?" When the officers arrived, I unlocked the basement door and stepped aside as they entered. The builders and my wife scrambled out, looking disheveled and desperate. The builders immediately started shouting accusations. "He locked us in," one of them said. "We're the crew working on his house. He's lying." I calmly countered their claims. "I just got back from a business trip," I explained to the officers. "If you don't believe me, you can confirm my alibi with my boss and my neighbor. They'll tell you when I returned." The officers made their calls, and my story checked out. Meanwhile, the builders fumbled, unable to produce any contract or documentation proving they had a legitimate reason to be in my house. By the end of the ordeal, the police escorted the builders off the property. My wife and I were left alone in the aftermath. She stood there, avoiding my gaze, knowing there was no way to explain or justify what had happened. The silence between us was deafening, and the weight of her betrayal hung heavy in the air. As soon as the police left and the door closed, the tension in the house reached its breaking point. My wife, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "How could you do that?" she demanded, her voice sharp and filled with anger. "Locking them in the basement? Calling the police? Do you even realize what you've done?" Her words were accusatory, as if she were the one who had been wronged. I didn't flinch. "What I did?" I shot back. "You're questioning my actions when you're the one who betrayed me. Don't you dare try to turn this around. You have no right." My voice was steady, but my anger simmered beneath the surface. She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to speak. Not after what you've done." She tried to defend herself, her tone becoming desperate. "It wasn't what it looked like," she began, but I wasn't having it. "Save it," I said coldly. "I don't want your excuses. There's nothing you can say that will undo what I saw." "Nothing." She fell silent, realizing that her words would carry no weight with me. Without another word, I walked past her and headed to the bedroom. I grabbed a suitcase and began pulling her clothes from the closet, tossing them in without care. "What are you doing?" she cried, following me. "Stop. You can't just throw me out like this." Her voice rose in pitch, but I didn't stop. The betrayal was too fresh, too deep. There was no room for reconciliation in my mind. "Watch me," I said bluntly, continuing to pack her belongings. She tried to grab the suitcase from me, but I pulled it away. "You're leaving," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "I'm not staying in this house with you for another second. You've crossed the line, and there's no coming back from this." She began to cry, not out of remorse but frustration. "You don't have the right to do this," she screamed. "This is my home too." I turned to face her, my expression hardened. "No," I said. "It's not. I paid for this house. I've spent months working my ass off to turn it into something we could both enjoy. And you've done nothing but betray that effort. So, no, you don't get to stay." She tried to argue, her words coming out in a jumbled mess of anger and desperation, but I wasn't listening anymore. I zipped up the suitcase and pushed it toward the door. "Take it and go," I said firmly. "You're not welcome here anymore." She stood there, stunned, as if she couldn't believe I was serious. But when I opened the door and stepped aside, the reality of the situation finally hit her. "You'll regret this," she spat, her voice filled with venom. "You can't just get rid of me like this. I'll fight you for everything." I shook my head. "Do what you want," I said. "But this marriage is over. You're getting out of my house, and you're not coming back. Now leave." Her protests continued, but they fell on deaf ears as I guided her out the door and closed it behind her. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was also a relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of control over my life again. A few days after everything had seemingly settled, the construction crew showed up at my doorstep. Their faces were a mix of smugness and feigned professionalism. "We're here to talk about payment," the leader said, his tone carrying a hint of menace. "You owe us for the work we've done." I stared at them for a moment, letting the silence stretch. Then, with a calm voice, I replied, "You mean payment for betrayal?" "Sure, I've got something for you." Without waiting for a response, I walked into the house, grabbed the trash bin that had been sitting by the back door, and returned to the window overlooking where they stood. Their expressions changed to confusion as I hoisted the bin and dumped its contents out the window, letting garbage rain down on them. "There's your payment," I said coldly. "Now get off my property." Their shock quickly turned to anger. "You'll regret this," one of them shouted, shaking his fist. "You better watch your back." I didn't flinch. Instead, I closed the window and walked away, refusing to engage further. Their threats were empty words to me at that moment, but little did I know how far they'd be willing to go. Over the next few days, I focused on legal matters, consulting with my lawyer to ensure everything was in order. Divorce proceedings were already underway, and I wanted to make sure I was protected from any additional fallout from the renovation debacle. My lawyer assured me that I was on solid ground, especially since there were no formal contracts with the crew. But the builders weren't done. Late one night, my neighbor called me, sounding alarmed. "I think something's going on near your house," he said. "There's a couple of guys near your car with what looks like a gas can." My heart sank as I quickly checked the security feed on my phone. Sure enough, 2 figures were lurking near the driveway, their movements suspicious. I called the police immediately, explaining the situation. As I waited for them to arrive, I stayed inside, watching through the window as the men began dousing my car with gasoline. They were sloppy, their movements rushed and panicked. It was clear they had no experience with this kind of thing. Within minutes, the flashing lights of a police car illuminated the street, and the 2 men froze like deer caught in headlights. The officers apprehended them on the spot. As they were handcuffed and led away, I stepped outside to watch. One of the men tried to plead his case. "It wasn't what it looked like," he said, "but the evidence was clear. The gas can, the matches in his pocket, and the security footage I provided left no room for doubt." At the station, their stories fell apart quickly under questioning. What started as a petty act of revenge escalated into a serious charge. This time, there were no excuses, no loopholes to exploit. The police informed me that the men were being charged with attempted arson, a crime that carried significant consequences. Unlike their first brush with the law, this incident ensured they wouldn't be walking away so easily. The day of the divorce proceedings came faster than I had expected, but I was ready. Armed with undeniable evidence of her betrayal, the process was swift and decisive. The judge reviewed the documentation I provided, including the video footage and statements from witnesses, and ruled in my favor. My wife's arguments, weak and unconvincing, were dismissed without much consideration. By the end of the hearing, I walked out of the courtroom knowing that the chapter of my life with her was officially over. With the divorce finalized, I turned my focus back to the house. The renovations had been tainted by the events surrounding them, but I refused to let that ruin my plans. Calling on a few close friends, I decided to finish the work myself. Over the course of several weekends, we repainted the walls, fixed the remaining issues, and restored order to the home. It was hard work, but it felt good to reclaim the space on my own terms. The basement, however, required a different approach. I couldn't look at it without being reminded of everything that had happened. So, I stripped it bare, removing all traces of the so-called intimate space my wife had envisioned. Instead of turning it into anything elaborate, I decided to use it for storage. Old boxes, tools, and seasonal decorations now occupied the space. It wasn't glamorous, but it was practical, and more importantly, it was mine. One of the first changes I made after the divorce was to replace all the locks in the house. The property was legally mine, a fact that the court had affirmed during the proceedings. My wife hadn't contributed a single penny to the purchase or renovation of the home. It was my hard work that had paid for everything, and I wasn't about to let her have any claim to it now. Changing the locks felt symbolic, a way of closing the door on the past and securing a new beginning. Life slowly began to settle into a new normal. Without the constant drama and tension, I found peace in the small things. I took up hobbies I had neglected, spent more time with friends, and focused on my work. The house, once a source of stress and conflict, became a haven. It was quiet, organized, and finally felt like a place I could truly call home. Then, one day, she showed up. My ex-wife stood on the porch, her expression a mix of desperation and regret. She begged me to take her back, promising that things would be different this time. I listened without interrupting, letting her say her piece. When she was finished, I looked her in the eye and said firmly, "No. You made your choices, and I've made mine. This door is closed." She left, tears in her eyes, and I felt no remorse. My decision was final. She eventually moved in with her parents, where I heard she'd been staying ever since. We had no further contact after that day. I didn't block her number or go out of my way to avoid her, but there was no reason for our paths to cross again. I had moved on, and so, it seemed, had she. The chapter was closed, and I had no intention of reopening it. In the end, life turned out well for me. The house stood as a testament to my resilience, a place where I could build new memories and leave the past behind. My ex-wife's absence became a distant memory, and the peace that followed her departure was more than enough. The story had reached its conclusion, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free.
After being married for 38 years, raising 3 married children, and having 5 precious grandchildren, she's pulling this nonsense. I've worked hard to become debt-free and be just 2 years away from retirement. She claimed she was in Arizona for a mandatory educators conference, but I dropped her off at the airport, planning to pick her up on Thursday. A co-worker in Vegas for a PBR event sent me a photo of her in a casino with our family doctor. Now, it's Christmas, and all the kids are coming over. I was looking forward to hunting with my son and grandsons. I'm not sure if I should confront her now or act normal until after Christmas to avoid ruining it for the kids. Maybe picking her up and pretending everything is fine will give me a chance to gather more evidence. It's tough, but I don't want to devastate my children during this time of year. This woman sang a solo in church on Sunday and caught a flight on Monday to spend the week with the doctor. I've never suspected her of cheating in our 40-year relationship. I never have either. It seems like the secure life I thought I had is over. Thankfully, my parents aren't around to witness this. I might just catch a flight tomorrow and find them using different names. The frustrating part is both my brothers are gone, and there's no one I can talk to about this. Maybe a pastor. Who knows? She might be involved with him too. Update. I took some time off work and am currently at my camp. My wife's sister picked her up from the airport on Thursday evening. I hired a lawyer and a PI recommended by the lawyer. I haven't talked to my wife about the Vegas pictures, and the only people who know are my lawyers and Reddit. My wife thinks I'm at the camp because a big buck I've been hunting for a couple of seasons is back on my plot cameras. We've had phone and text conversations, just casual. She doesn't suspect that I'm investigating her trip or life. We end every conversation with, "I love you," as usual. I've followed my lawyer's advice about our finances. The PI confirmed an affair between my wife and the doctor for over a year. We'll find out more details later. She didn't attend a conference in Arizona. She spent every night in Vegas. I plan to confront her when the PI completes his investigation. We believe they will meet. Since I'm out of town, I intend to give them ample opportunity to do so before I come home. I wasn't aware that most affairs occur in a demographic group of 55 to 70 years old. I thought we had a very good marriage. She seemed content with where we were in life, and I believe she loved me as I did her. I loved her completely, Everything seems so surreal. Each day has brought things to light I never would have imagined. I guess at this point, I want to know how many years of my life have been a lie and why the life we had was not enough. Why was I not enough? Why were our children and grandchildren not enough? She is a beautiful woman. I always thought it was inside and out. I'm going to divorce her. There's no path to reconciliation. I'm not sure how scorched earth I will go. I'm very angry at both of them. I will confront the doctor and his wife together. I can't say today exactly what else I will do. I think I have to take it one step at a time, and the first step is to learn as much as I can before they have a chance to collaborate their stories. He may just be the latest in line. Update. I'll head home tonight. My 84-year-old mother-in-law has been a widow for 12 years and will be heartbroken by my wife's cheating. Tomorrow night, my wife's 3 married sisters, all in long-term marriages, are coming over for Christmas. Since my father-in-law passed away, I've been grilling steaks for them every Christmas. If I skip going home, it'll raise suspicions for my wife. I thought about faking the flu and staying put, but I've decided to go home. Missing this would affect the plan to return with my son and grandsons. I haven't confronted her yet. We've talked a bit, mostly through text. I'm sure she suspects nothing now. I've given the gate and house code to the PI. He, along with an IT guy, accessed her desktop while she was at work. Somehow, he's now getting her texts from iCloud. I don't fully understand how he pulled it off, but he did. I'm not in touch with the PI or lawyer daily. I don't know what he's found so far. I've got a meeting with him and my attorney next Friday morning, a week from tomorrow. It's tough for me to control my anger with what I know now. I think I'm spending unnecessarily on the PI, but my attorney wants me to keep gathering evidence until I confront her. I plan to get the info next week and hopefully stop paying him. I usually go to camp the week before and after Christmas. She won't suspect a thing. If I can hold off exploding when I get home, I'll leave again on Sunday. My son and grandsons are scheduled to hunt the week before Christmas, our yearly tradition. I haven't seen her in almost 2 weeks. I never imagined my love for her could turn into so much hatred and contempt. My plan is to wrap up the evidence I get next Friday after Christmas lunch. We'll open gifts with our children and grandchildren. I'll let her open hers last, ask her to show our children, take her phone, and leave. My next stop will be the doctor's house, where I'll deliver the evidence to his wife and family and then file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. Update. I got back from the camp last Thursday evening, and she was home. I was worn out from lack of sleep, so our conversation was brief. On Friday night, we had a Christmas gathering at our place with her mother and 3 sisters. I managed to pull it off without her getting suspicious. I spent most of Saturday away, and after church on Sunday, I went back to my camp. My son and grandson joined me there on Sunday night. We hunted all week, and now I'm back home. We don't have any plans for tomorrow. Our kids and grandkids will go to church with us on Sunday and then come over here for Christmas lunch and gifts. I've surprised everyone by keeping my emotions in check, given the tough situation I'm facing. I've reconsidered how I'll reveal her affair. I won't confront her on Christmas. I've scheduled a meeting with my attorney on Tuesday morning. I plan to gather all the evidence he and the investigator have collected, along with the divorce papers he's prepared. I want to have my son and 2 daughters come to our house for a family meeting on Tuesday night to expose her affair and confront her. At this point, I'm not sure how I'll confront the doctor and his wife. My goal is to damage his reputation and career using any means available to me. Update. We got through Christmas with my kids, grandkids, and in-laws. On Monday morning, I talked to my pastor about the situation. He arranged a meeting between me and the affair partner's wife. We decided to confront our spouses on Monday night, making them write detailed letters about the affair. I made my wife write the letter and didn't let her explain anything to me. I told her I knew she was in Vegas and who she was with. I instructed her to include all details, and if there was any contradiction to the evidence I had, reconciliation was off the table. On Tuesday morning, I met with my attorney, got the collected evidence, and received advice. In the afternoon, I met with the affair partner's employer, demanding his termination. He got fired today. On Tuesday night, my children came, and their mother confessed to them. They're shocked and hurt. My wife went home with my daughter and is still there. I'm figuring out my next move. Reconciliation seems unlikely. I'll decide what to do with the affair partner once I'm clear about my own marriage. She admitted everything and answered every specific detail I asked for in her letter. Update. Did I question her why? Certainly, I asked why. She couldn't explain why. She told me and our kids that she felt like independent, aware she was ruining her life, but unable to stop. She told our children that they shouldn't have to endure disappointment or embarrassment due to their mother's immorality, expressing they didn't deserve the shame of a fancy woman. I won't share all she said because I'm unsure if any of it is true. How did she behave? She's completely shattered, remorseful, and pleading for forgiveness from me and the kids. She comprehends the gravity of her actions. How did my children react? One told her, and the other two agreed. It would have been easier to bury you than deal with this. Do I want to stay married? Yes, I do. That's why I never cheated on my wife. Have I met the affair partner's wife and told her? Yes, we've met twice and communicated by phone and text several times. Do I not care for his family by having him fired? I care more for the next patient's wife. He's inappropriate at 7 a.m. I'm considering divorcing her. I'm not sure. Have I sought therapy? Not at this time. What I need is for this to go away. If you know anyone who can make that happen, I'll do therapy. Every situation is unique in its elements, personalities, and complexities. I could handle it differently at a different time in my life. Every nuance I'm dealing with has been a great source of strength. One Redditor has been a valuable source of wisdom, knowledge, and encouragement. He has helped me more than I can express gratitude for. It's not like I got to spend quality time with my wife. She's not here. Why is she at my daughter's and not my in-laws? Her dad is dead, and her mom is 84. I didn't want her mom to deal with this. She's at my baby daughter and her husband's home. They have no children yet, and the chance of her turning any of my children against me doesn't exist. This is especially true of this little Spitfire, 10 years younger than her sister and 12 years younger than her brother. She spent more hours in a deer stand, bay boat, and office truck with me than we could count. She won't let her say true things that are bad about me, let alone lies. Update. Weekend plans. I had a brother who was 14 years younger than me. He was a college professor living 8.5 hours away from our hometown. Unfortunately, he passed away in a motorcycle accident in 2017. He left behind a daughter, now 24, who is married and resides in a different state than her mother. However, she's brought her new baby home to visit her mother and in-laws. My sister-in-law hasn't remarried. I called my sister-in-law last night to find out when my niece was heading back home. Turns out, she's staying this week with her husband's parents, about 40 minutes from my sister-in-law. Since my children are smothering me, I've decided to go on a road trip. I'll be meeting my great-nephew, named after my brother and me. I'll arrive late tonight. I asked her to reserve a hotel room, but she insisted, saying, "There's no way in hell that's happening. You'll stay here, and we'll watch movies and eat ice cream." I don't know when I'm coming back. I haven't spoken to or seen my wife since Tuesday night. I blocked her number. I called my son and informed him of my destination, asking him to go to the office and lease a rental property owned by my company. It's a renovated house intended for sale. I instructed him to let his mother know to collect what she needs from our house and move into the rental. She should pay rent to my son, who will then pay my company. I'm getting a new keypad installed on the gate and doors of my house on Wednesday, so she needs to get her stuff now. Update. Had a good weekend. When I called my sister-in-law, I let her know I'd be coming alone to see my niece and her new baby. She asked why my wife isn't coming, and I just said there are some issues, and I'll let you know when I get there. I got here around midnight, and she had just taken a hot pound cake out of the oven, the best thing I've eaten in weeks. I shared all the details of my saga with her. I teared up a few times, but as I went through it with her, I broke down and wept. She was very supportive and wept with me, stroking my bruised ego, and I guess I felt better after we talked. I went to bed around 3 o'clock yesterday morning. Yesterday morning, she cooked bacon and eggs for breakfast, and as I ate, told me that I may make the rules and run the show back home, but not at her house. She then proceeded to tell me my schedule. At 1 o'clock, I had a haircut appointment, overdue since this all happened, and then we were going to Dillard's to buy clothes to fit me. I've lost over 30 pounds in 3 weeks. After the haircut, we were going to a friend's house for a bonfire and fireworks last night. I was also going with her to church today, and she was visiting her parents this afternoon. She's cooking supper tonight, and her daughter and son-in-law are coming to eat and visit. Her son-in-law is taking me deer hunting tomorrow on an 8,000-acre timber co-lease he's part of. He's off all week, and if I want, I can stay and hunt all week. She will wash my clothes and feed me. We won't talk about my problems again until I leave to go home. So, I did what I was told to do. She went with me to her regular salon, and on the way there said, "I'm going to use you to have some fun. When I introduce you, I'm going to give them your first and middle name." I asked her, "What the hell?" And she just laughed and said, "Just play along. I'm going to give these witches something to talk about." My middle name is my mother's maiden name. That's how she introduced me to her hairstylist. During my haircut, she asked where I was from, and I said, "Detroit." There's no way my accent will allow me to be from Detroit. My sister-in-law never missed a beat and said, "He's a logger." Next stop, Dillard's. I haven't shopped for anything in years. Ended up buying 3 new pants, 4 shirts, 2 pairs of shoes, a tie, and believe it or not, a $75 tie and a heart-shaped marked suit. According to her, it's the only suit my brother would wear. I didn't know he was so particular about his clothes. Also bought a new belt. The suit had to be hemmed, and she convinced them to do it while we waited. On the way home, she told me I'd be her date for the party in church, so I was. She told me to look at her like I looked at a new pistol so they would buy it. I went along with her except at the party. I was from Atlanta, sold road graders, and had been married and divorced 4 times. At church this morning, we got there late and left early because she doesn't want to be struck by lightning for lying in church. She sat right up under me, held my hand, and we walked out. I've had a good time looking like Dumb and Dumber with my 46-year-old sister-in-law. She has cut up the whole time, and I have laughed, genuinely laughed. I haven't done that for 3 weeks. I'm going to hunt tomorrow and may stay until Wednesday, but I have to be at work Friday. I've talked to my son a couple of times. He thinks they need to try to get her some medical help. She evidently is not saying much and stays in her bedroom at my daughter's house most of the time. Her phone is dead, and he and my other daughter communicate with her through my youngest. The affair partner's wife sent her a long text in which she called her everything but a child of God. I haven't communicated with my wife. She asked where I was and told my daughter I would never be able to forgive her, and she didn't blame me for not forgiving. My son said she looks like passing away. I still see no path to reconciliation. However, I am not going to file for divorce until I am completely sure. Some have said divorce and reconcile. If I change my mind, that seems like a waste of time, energy, and money. When I decide to divorce, it will be final. I also am not going to sue affair partner if I don't divorce. If I do divorce, I will sue him to defray what the divorce settlement will be otherwise. I don't want his money. I have come to terms with the fact that this is not going to end soon, and that my life will never be the same. Update. My wife is in the hospital. Yesterday morning, my daughter took her to the ER because she was dehydrated. Tests revealed that her kidney function wasn't normal, and she was showing signs of confusion, leading to her admission. They started her on a drip, and today they will conduct more labs. A psych evaluation has been ordered, and they anticipate her stay in the hospital to last most of the week. My son informed her sisters about her hospitalization, mentioning that I was out of town. As far as I know, her sisters and mother are unaware of her affair. I plan to sit down with her mother and oldest sister this weekend. In hindsight, I should have done this last Friday before leaving town. I'm still at my sister-in-law's house. I went hunting yesterday, but it is raining today, so I chose not to go out again this morning. Last night's dinner included fried steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, homemade biscuits, apple cobbler, and ice cream. This morning my sister-in-law has a few things to do, but instructed me to be dressed and ready to go rambling when she returns. I suppose I'm glad to be here. I don't feel like talking to my friends just yet, and being at work isn't appealing. I have my laptop and phone, and an assistant co-worker who has been with me for 25 years, so business is being conducted as usual. He knows about the affair because he was the one who made me aware of the Vegas trip. Regarding her sister, I called her and provided a basic summary of the affair and the circumstances leading to my wife's hospitalization. She was genuinely shocked, apologetic, and sympathetic. My mother-in-law is leaving tomorrow on a trip with 3 other widows she is friends with. My daughters, part of what they jokingly call the BHH gang, blue-haired hoe, enjoy taking bus tours. She said she was not going to tell her about the affair or the psych evaluation, just that my wife's condition didn't seem serious enough for me to cut short my trips. She mentioned that I didn't seem myself and looked troubled when they left my house. The sisters are going to assist my daughters and daughter-in-law during the hospital stay, and one of them will take her home with them until she is able to move from our house. I called my youngest daughter and told her to go by the office and get a check. Go cash it, buy a card, and take it by her grandmother's house. I have a name stamp at the office she can sign the card with to put a note in it to enjoy her trip, and that I loved her. Update. Regarding my wife's health, her kidney function has shown improvement. However, based on a psychiatric evaluation, she has experienced a psychotic break. She's disoriented, believing that we were in a car accident, and I am now deceased. She's distressed, thinking my funeral happened without her, and she's expressing her emotions in a way that's difficult to comprehend. Tonight, they transferred her to a hospital specialized in mental trauma, expecting a full recovery in the coming days or weeks. However, she must have no contact with anyone for the next 10 days. My middle daughter will be the family contact for afternoon updates until she can have visitors. This situation is an unbelievable and unnecessary mess. I'm still at Sparky's place, and she arranged a 9:30 a.m. appointment with a psychiatrist she had seen for 2 years after my brother's tragic passing away. After a shower, when putting on my pajamas to go back downstairs, I realized that all my perfectly good white Fruit of the Loom boxer shorts were missing. They had been replaced by boxer briefs from Duluth Trading Company with a band that says, "Go Buck Undressed." The colors include red, black, neon blue, maroon, and dark and light gray. When I questioned her about it, she humorously said the 60s called and wanted those ugly drawers back. She added that the boys need to breathe. Update. I got back home on Thursday night after seeing a psychologist my sister-in-law recommended, who she had used after my brother's passing away. The meeting didn't go well. To be fair to the counselor, I wasn't keen on going, and I was pretty angry at the time. Discussing the details of my wife's affair made me very uncomfortable. I had to attend a work meeting on Friday for a contract addendum that needed my presence and signature on a modified agreement. I met with my children in the afternoon to update them on their mother's condition. The clinician asked us to submit a plan for her discharge, and I stood firm that she couldn't return home but should move into a rental property. Today's status report showed encouraging progress over the weekend. They are also planning family sessions with her as early as the end of this week. I made it clear to my children that I wouldn't be attending any family sessions. I told them her recovery wasn't my responsibility and I wouldn't be part of it. While they may not fully agree, that's the stance I'm taking. However, I did commit to not filing for divorce in the next 6 months. I attended church on Sunday, sitting in our usual spot of nearly 40 years. None of the affair partner's family was there, and I didn't bother asking my pastor about them because I don't care. This afternoon, I met with a psychologist recommended by my pastor. It was a productive meeting for me. He's 74 years old, working part-time from an office behind his home. He outlined the goals he'd like to achieve with me, and I agreed to follow the steps. I feel comfortable with him and agreed to meet weekly. An investigator from the State Medical Board Examiner's Office is coming to my office on Wednesday morning. This follows a complaint filed by the attorney against the affair partner. I'll have to give a sworn deposition about the affair. I resent every step I have to take because of her affair. While I don't think she's faking a mental breakdown, I find it challenging to be sympathetic. Update. My wife is still undergoing treatment and is committed to staying there for 30 days. She's improving, but my children agree that she needs more in-house treatment. I haven't directly communicated with her since December 27th. To cover the costs, she withdrew from her retirement account. I haven't had a sit-down with my mother-in-law. She and her daughters have visited my wife. I texted her that I would talk when I felt ready. She has called to check on me multiple times. While she's sad, she remains strong. There's no news about the affair partner, but his house is up for sale. I'm unsure if they are separated or still together. I've attended counseling twice and am actually looking forward to my Monday meeting. It's been beneficial for me. The affair is widely known and being gossiped about. Despite being thoroughly embarrassed by her actions, I continue to attend church and hold my head up. My children and grandchildren are doing well, keeping busy at work and managing my son's re-election campaign has helped me stay occupied. Lately, I've noticed more attractive women than ever before. I'm not sure if it's good or bad, just something I've become more aware of. I believe that covers everything. Update. My wife left the hospital on Tuesday and headed to a rental property owned by my company. Despite being an older house, it has undergone a complete renovation from the stud walls. I still haven't spoken to her since December 27th. She penned 2 letters expressing remorse and seeking my forgiveness. I haven't replied, except for telling my children that I've read them and will reach out when I'm ready to discuss the past and the future. We have a woman who has been a housekeeper for my wife for over 20 years. I sent people to my house, and following my daughter and the housekeeper's guidance, they moved a bedroom suite and other essentials to create a comfortable space for my wife. They bought new furniture, and everything has been ready for her release from the hospital for over a week. She arranged to employ the housekeeper every day for as long as needed, providing her with a driver and sitter for the nights her sisters stay as long as required. I had dinner with my mother-in-law at her home on Tuesday night and explained my stance. She was very understanding and expressed her support for me. According to my son, his grandmother visited his mother last night and wasn't very sympathetic. Apparently, she didn't spare my wife's feelings with what she told her. This is the first time they discussed my wife's betrayal. I'm going to Sparky's tomorrow. She has tickets for a concert on Saturday night. Initially, she and a friend were going, but the friend can't make it due to a coworker's funeral on Saturday. We'll fly to North Carolina tomorrow afternoon and return Sunday afternoon. I'm looking forward to something different, and hopefully I'll enjoy it. I'm actually enjoying counseling and look forward to the weekly sessions. It seems to help me compartmentalize the pieces of my life.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
As I sit here on this bar stool at the Logan's Inn, I realize that my life feels like the plot of a bad country song. I'm trying to drown my sorrows in beer, doing my best to forget the hell my life has become. My name is Brian Harris, and I have a serious problem that I just can't seem to solve. Why, you ask? It all started because of a woman. Not in the way you might think. She didn't cheat on me. The woman in question wasn't my wife, but my boss. I work construction, and my boss, Grant, passed away from a heart attack a year ago. I had been with Tyler and Grant Turner for almost 20 years and had recently become a construction supervisor. My next step would be transitioning to an office job, but that wasn't something I was keen on. I loved being outdoors, and I knew that once I started working inside, I wouldn't be getting the exercise I do now. At 6'2" and 245 pounds, and at 42 years old, I could easily picture my future self. I would end up looking like Grant, having gained 40 or 50 pounds and becoming a heart attack waiting to happen. That's not a fate I want for my family. Grant was only 5 years older than I am, and I could clearly see my future if I stopped working with my hands and spent my days sitting at a desk. Grant was once in my shoes 5 years ago, when he took over as construction supervisor from Tyler Turner, his father. Tyler initially retired to South Texas, then later relocated to a villa on the west coast of Mexico, overlooking the Gulf of California. His home was perched on a high hill north and west of Guaymas. He vowed he would never return to run Turner Construction, believing it required a younger man. Someone like me. I refused, and therefore, Evelyn Turner, Tyler's daughter, took over. Actually, her married name is Evelyn Allred, but in the business, she uses Turner. She has run the office since before Tyler retired. So as far as knowing what to do and how, she was very capable. Things were fine for the first couple of years, but I guess Evelyn got lonely and overwhelmed with the workload. So she started shoving more of her workload onto me. It started out with just 2 days a week when I had to go into the office and do paperwork. Next, after 6 months, it was 3 days a week and subsequently 4 days a week a couple of months later. I had a good site foreman, Alex McKenzie, but he was just not quite ready to take over for me. He was still a young kid to me, even though he was 35. He worked his way up from a day laborer to site foreman in the last 17 years. He had no college degree, just like me, but he was working on that and had 2 years under his belt so far. However, he was at the point that he would now be getting all the tools he needed to be able to take over my job, once he finished. Even so, with me gone so much, he had to pick up more of my load on the sites. When he was gone from one side to go to another, things kind of got dropped by the wayside. Things like his education, things forgotten, and sometimes some sloppy work. I told Evelyn that she had to hire someone to come in and do what I had been doing in the office or hire a new construction supervisor. I couldn't do both jobs and still have quality work be done either in the office or on the sites. Evelyn said that she would take that under advisement and for me to get back to work. That was on Tuesday morning. By Friday, I was by myself in the office and no Evelyn. I called her home and got no answer. I called her husband Stuart, and he hadn't seen her since Wednesday evening. He figured that she was working late and going in early. Evelyn had come in for a while on Thursday, but I had to leave to take care of a problem on a second building site and didn't get back to the office until after 6 in the evening. The place was locked up tight, and no one was there. I figured that Evelyn had gone home, and since it was after 6, the rest of the staff had gone home too. This is where we come to my sitting in the Logan's Inn, trying to drown my sorrows. My wife is pissed at me, my kids I never see, and I'm working my butt off and I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm trying to do 2 jobs and I go to work at 6 in the morning, and by the time I finish up all the paperwork, it's nearly 9 at night. I can't sleep for shit with all the worrying over the payroll, the purchasing and getting the buildings done right. My mind is mush. Then 2 months after Evelyn left comes the next bomb. Just when I think I see a light at the end of the tunnel, I find out it's the damn train speeding my way. I lumbered into the office on a Monday morning and found a voicemail on my phone. Brian, I've had enough. My lawyer should contact you sometime on Monday and go over everything. I made you a full partner in the company with a majority percentage of the company, so you can run it just like it should. I will get my part of the profit in a monthly stipend. I'm really sorry about dropping this on you, but I had to leave or go crazy and do something really rash. I know that the company is in good hands now. That was it. I was currently the majority owner of Turner Construction Company. Great. Now I could look forward to about another 3 to 5 years or less, and then death by heart attack. First thing I did was call the company lawyer, Dennis Brown. He confirmed that I essentially owned the company and was CEO and COO of Turner Construction. Once that sunk in, I sat in my chair and just vegged out for about half an hour until Emily Parker, my secretary, came in and asked if I was okay. She found me slumped over my desk on my folded arms and appeared to have had a heart attack, just like Grant. She was a fairly new secretary for Grant when she came in one morning and found Grant slumped over this very desk. At first, she screamed and panicked, and when I rose up, she almost fainted. She did drop into one of my conference chairs by the door. For God's sake, Brian, don't ever do that again. Once was enough. If you do that once more, I will quit so fast you won't even know I'm gone until the door slams in your face. Now what has you in that mood this morning? I looked into her eyes and said, I'm the new owner and boss. I guess the way I said that it was like someone issuing a death sentence. She stared at me for a few seconds and then said, so that means I'm promoted to the executive secretary for the new boss, right? So, does that come with a good raise? Her voice was full of glee as she said that. I guess so, but I wouldn't count on that. I need you to get me Nick Dalton on the phone. Maybe he can recommend someone for this job, and I can go back to work in the field. Nick owned Dalton Construction and was a good friend. He could possibly help me find either a decent replacement for me in the field or perhaps someone to run the company, so I could go back outdoors where I wanted to be. Line 1, Brian, came from my phone and faintly from the open door to my office. Hiya, Nick. How's tricks in the big building business? Brian, you old horse's rear. I heard some of what you need from my secretary. I guess yours talked to mine to see about me helping you out. That's right, Nick. I find myself in a fix. I'm now the majority owner of Turner, and I really am in over my head. I would like to find someone to take over here in the office for me, so I can go back out to the field where I can do the most good. Now, Brian, how can you say that? I thought that you were perfect for the inside man. Nick, how can you say that with a straight face? You remember what happened to Grant? Well, I can just see that happening to me in a few years. I don't even want to think about that prospect. Brian, please settle down. For one thing, you aren't Grant. You are a lot more level-headed, and I'm sure that you would understand how important exercise and discipline are to your continued good health. Grant was never one to exercise after he took over for his dad. He really should have given that job to you to begin with. Grant was the brawn, and you were the brain of that duo. Tyler should have known that, as I told him enough times. But he wanted the company to stay in the family, so he got what I expected. What are you talking about, Nick? Me being the brains? Hell, I'm more brawn than Grant, and he had the college education to go along with it. Me, I just rose up through the ranks from a gopher in high school to the construction supervisor when Grant went into the office. I can't run a company. I don't have the education for it. Nonsense, Brian. You are more qualified than just about anyone I know. You know that business inside and out. Sure, you might need some help with some of the heavy engineering, But that's why you have engineers and architects to do that part. But, as far as knowing the ins and out of construction, you are the best, Brian. Nick then quizzed me on a few things, and I rattled off the answers right off the top of my head. I didn't think about the question. I just answered. When he finished, he said, "See what I mean, Brian? You know that business inside and out. There really is no one better qualified than you to run that business. Now what you need is a clone of you to work the field. I have just the person in mind. They're a little younger than you but have the education and the experience to be building supervisor for your people. I want to send someone over to you later this afternoon. You can interview them, and you can see what I mean. However, until then, just chill out, Brian. You'll get through this and come out the other end much better than you are now." "Okay, Nick, I'll chill for a while, but this guy better be someone special. Believe me, Brian, they're special, all right. Talk to you later, Brian." By now, the rest of the staff had come in, and I decided to call a meeting and let everyone know what happened to the company. We had our own accounting department, well, 3 people, 1 CPA and 2 accounting clerks, 1 for payroll and 1 for everything else. Then purchasing was 2 people. Overall, we had 20 people in the office, counting me and Emily, to take care of everything. We had 5 engineers, but no architect. We depended on the architects to provide us with the overall building concept, and it was up to us to make the concept a reality. We did everything from strip malls to high-rise office apartment buildings. We were a small company compared to Dalton, but larger than most others. We normally didn't have more than 3 projects going on at once. Right now, we only have 2, but another one should start in a couple of weeks, and then one of our projects would finish up next month. At the meeting, I got a lot of congratulations and a few condolences, but overall it went well. I had no longer sat down at my desk when Alex came in and said, "I have some paperwork for you to sign, Brian. Once we have this done, then you are officially the new majority owner of Turner Construction LP." I keep hearing majority owner. What does that mean? As well as the LP, Alex? Well, the way it works out, you are currently the general partner and at the moment owner of 40% of the company and get 40% of the profits. Jason, Evelyn, and Henrietta each as limited partners and can't tell you how to run the company, but they have a 20% interest in the company and get 20% of the profits and are not legally responsible for any debts incurred by the company. As general partner and chief of operations, you are in the unenviable spot that you are liable for 100% of all losses. I know this sounds like you're stuck in a bad position. However, you have the ability to do anything you want with the company. I mean, you can sell it, drive it into the ground, and bankrupt the company and yourself. Even so, you also can turn this around and make it a bigger business, and your profits go up. You can even buy out the other partners and become a sole owner. So there are really a lot of options as far as what you can do. You could even run the company for a few years and then sell out to Dalton or even Schuster and Schuster up in Dallas. That way, you could retire and relax for a while, travel, or just stay home with your wife and kids. It's all up to you now. Now that retiring thing doesn't sound half bad. However, that 100% liability would put a real crimp in my brain if that were to happen. I mean, I could lose everything I have now and be in debt up past my ears, right? That would only happen if you were to run this company into the ground. I for one know you are way too smart to let that happen. So just forget about that part and concentrate on growing the business so you make it attractive to bigger organizations so that when you are ready to retire you can leave with a clear conscience. Yeah, but in the meantime, I am swamped with doing my job, Evelyn's job, and everything else. Not to worry, Brian. You can handle it. If your partners didn't think that you could, do you think they would have saddled you with the job? Certainly not, Jason. He might be old, but he is one crafty SOB. And he would come up here and run this place if he didn't think you could do the job. Now I have to get back to my job so you can do yours. See ya, Brian. And Alex left me sitting there not knowing what to do next. I had Emily send out for something for lunch and about 2. I was buzzed and told that my 2 o'clock appointment was here. What 2 o'clock appointment? I don't have anyone on my calendar. Yes, you do. Nick Dalton made the appointment for you. Remember he was sending someone over? Okay, send the guy in. Maybe he can help me with this mess I'm in. You could have blown me over with a feather when my appointment walked in my door. She, yes, a she, most definitely a she, walked in like she owned the place. She was dressed in fairly tight jeans, a khaki long-sleeve shirt with the name Anna above the pocket that had several pins and pencils in. She had a hard hat in her hand and a tool belt with tape measure and 2 phones and miscellaneous other stuff similar to my own belt that hung on my bathroom doorknob here in the office. I never could make the hat stay upright when I hung that on there. Anna was tall, at almost 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a tiny waist, and from what I could tell, great legs. She was a brunette with a kind of a page boy haircut, but it really looked good on her. She also filled out the shirt quite nicely. She walked up to the desk and reached out her right hand, and I could see calluses on it much like mine. Here was someone who worked for a living with her hands and mind. I rose and shook hands with her as she said, "I'm Anna Davenport, and I understand that you need a new construction supervisor." I gestured her to a chair at my conference table, and we sat. "Yes, I'm in the market for either a field superintendent or an operations manager to work here in the office." "Well, I'll tell you right now, I probably wouldn't be interested in the office job. I'm more of an outdoorsy type myself, much like you were, I assume." Then we got down to business, and I quizzed her on all the things she should know to be a field construction supervisor, my old job. She had the education that I lacked, and that Alex McKenzie was working on. She also had 3.5 years experience as a site supervisor for Dalton Construction. She had come from one of their sites for this meeting and would like to get back. She asked what the salary was, and I mentioned more than Alex's and a little less than mine was. She said she would let me know later today or tomorrow morning. I really need to discuss this with my husband, and I would like to run it by my father too. I hope you don't mind? No, of course not. However, I really could use you as soon as possible. Right now, I am trying to do both jobs, and it gets tight sometimes. So the sooner I know, the better it is for me. If I do take it, I will have to give my employer at least 2 weeks' notice. Of course, I could expect no less from someone as qualified as you. We got up. I shook hands with her again, and she left. I sat back down stunned. Here was someone perfect to run my old job, and she was cute too, but I could tell she was a no-nonsense boss too. I went back to my desk and yelled to Emily to get me Nick Dalton on the phone. "Boss, you got an intercom. Why don't you use it?" I hear from the phone. Because I'm so used to yelling when I want something, I forget it's even available. "Please get Nick on the phone." "Thank you." "Emily." "Brian, how did you like my candidate? Was she something special?" "Yeah, she was special, all right. But are you sure that you want to lose someone with her qualifications? She is your site supervisor. I could see her becoming your new construction supervisor. Why would she want to work for me instead of you?" "Well, it might be that she thought working for you might take the sting out of a little nepotism on my part." "Huh, nepotism? Is she that little airhead I remember meeting about 10 years ago?" "Yep, the very same. She is my daughter, and she is as level-headed as you are. She finally came to the conclusion that Daddy wasn't going to give her everything like she and her mother thought. She flunked out her first semester in college, so I cut her off. I told her if she really wanted an education, I would make sure she got it. So I put her to work in the office for 6 months and then as a gopher on one of my bigger projects. If she lasted the next 6 months, I would pay for her college and everything associated with it. She really turned herself around in that year and went back to school and has been a real go-getter ever since. She even married my accountant, Edward Davenport. She wants to strike out on her own now to prove that she isn't getting a leg up from me. So, if she is qualified and you like her, you can hire her. If not, I get to keep her for a while. Nick, she is perfect and I would love to hire her, but she said that she had to talk to her husband and her father before she could give me her decision. Please don't talk her out of coming over here. I really need her. Once I get her on the payroll, you and I are going to have some talks, so I can get up to speed on what I need to know on this side of the equation. I know I am not any competition for your company, but maybe with Anna I can always hope. You do that, Brian. In the meantime, I would be glad to help with anything I can. I have the feeling that once you aren't pulled 7 ways from Sunday that you will be doing just fine without any help from me. I wish I had your optimism, Nick. I really do. Right now, I'm working from dawn to dusk just to keep my head above water. I never see my kids. My wife and a vacation is totally out. I may have that heart attack long before I get anything in any type of order. I doubt that, Brian. Just take things one at a time, and the rest will sort itself out. Believe me, when I first came into the office way back when, I was lost too, but it all worked out in the end. Yours will too. Just keep the faith and quit worrying. Call if you need something. Later, Brian. Yeah, Nick. Thanks, I guess I have let things get to me with everything happening all at once. Talk to you later. I sat back in my chair and thought about what Nick had said, and he was right. I had all the skills to do this job, but I was being pulled too many ways, and I had to take things one at a time and work on what I could fix and hope nothing else went wrong. That realization became a turning point in my life, and things turned for the better for me and my family. Anna did come to work for me, and she was a wonder. Within 2 weeks of her starting work, I was now just the boss of everything and was wading through all the mess that Evelyn had left me. By the end of my first month of being the head of this mess, I came into work smiling. I finally had a complete weekend with my family. I got to see my son Vincent, who came home from college to spend the weekend with us, and I even spent time with my daughter Brianna, which was rare since she at 17 was hardly ever home. However, the highlight of my weekend was the time I spent in bed with my lovely wife of 21 years, Jessica. We could reconnect on a level that we hadn't seen in several years. I now appreciated her in a way I had not known for over 5 years. We made love and cuddled in bed more like newlyweds, and we talked about our past and our future. I now had an assistant whom I hired with about 5 years' experience in the office of a construction company, but was working his way up. He graduated from college with a business degree and was hoping that he could eventually take over from me when I retired. With the new people I had hired, I could now take vacations, something I hadn't done in quite a while. Last weekend, I promised my wife that in 6 months, we would be taking a Caribbean cruise for a week, just the two of us. It would be a time for us to relax and get used to no children around. Brianna would be graduating soon, and with Vincent already gone, we would be alone. Jess and I promised ourselves that we would start a gym somewhere, and we would work out and trim down to be like we were when we first wed. Jess, like me, had put on a few pounds since the children, and though I never said it much anymore, I loved her more today than I did the day we said I do. Jess was still working part-time and volunteering at the local hospital when she wasn't scheduled, but an RN is always needed. When we started out, I worked and Jess went to nursing school, and we said then that once she was working full-time, I could go to night courses, but that never did pan out. However, I'm not one to complain. Things worked out for us, and now we couldn't be happier. I ran that company and made it grow. Soon I was bidding for projects against Nick. It was business and therefore cutthroat, and sometimes he won the bid, and sometimes I won. The first vacation I had in over 5 years came with the cruise of the Caribbean with my wife. Wow, what an experience. We made love every night. And since we had both trimmed down some, we could go on the excursions that were available. We went zip-lining over the jungle. We saw some Mayan ruins, and we swam in the clear waters of the Caribbean Sea and explored the coral there. I worked another 7 years and then retired for good. I still own the company of Turner Construction Company. I actually bought the 20% that Jason had upon his death, and I turned the company over to Alex Hines, the young kid I hired for the inside work back when I was struggling with all the work. Anna Davenport, my old site supervisor, went back to work for her dad and took over for him when he retired about 3 years before I did. Overall, life was good in Jess, and I enjoyed the empty nest we had now. We could travel when we wanted to and where we wanted. We took several more cruises. We went to Alaska, to Hawaii, and then took a river cruise on some of the European rivers. We even flew to Rome and drove to Brindisi, Italy, and did a cruise of the Mediterranean. I guess my moment in time came when I realized that I really could be the big boss and make things happen for the company. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
I'm a 25-year-old guy, and my wife is 27. We've been together for 8.5 years. We got legally married 10 weeks ago and had a church wedding 5 weeks ago. 2 weeks later, we went on our honeymoon. During the trip, I noticed for the first time that she was always texting on her phone, trying to hide it. When I asked, she said it was friends or her sister. This made me suspicious, and in the second week, I checked her phone while she was asleep. It was the first time I ever did that. I trusted her, but I found out she was cheating with a 39-year-old guy, a cook from her work, whom she sees daily. I didn't bring it up during the honeymoon to avoid a fight. After looking into it further, I discovered their relationship started at the end of November last year. So, after our engagement, but before our wedding, I don't know why she didn't tell me earlier when we had time to cancel the wedding. I haven't discussed this with my wife yet, but I think she suspects I know something. We still need to choose photos for our wedding album and write thank you letters for gifts. I didn't bring it up until now because of these things, but I'm dying inside and need to do something. I'm checking if I can legally remove her from our rented house, cancel the wedding, or get a divorce. We rented it together, and the contract has both our names. A relevant detail is that the other guy is separated from his wife and has 2 children in their teens. He's not divorcing her now due to loans they need to pay back. Also, they constantly talk about how much they love each other and would like to live their love fully, but they can't right now. As far as I know, the plan is for her to have children with me first, and then when he's ready, they'll get together. I feel guilty thinking about divorce 2 months after our wedding, as we had a big party and received a lot of gifts. But I can't go on like this. I don't even know what I'm expecting from you guys. Maybe I need confirmation that leaving her and getting divorced is the right thing. Thank you for any advice. Update. I talked to a lawyer in our office who doesn't really know about the matter. She gave me contact information for someone who could help. I plan to call today or tomorrow and try to meet with her soon. Update. The lawyer is checking if having another relationship is legally enough for an annulment. It's the first time someone called her so soon after marriage, and she felt bad for me. She'll let me know in a few days what options I have. Update. I can file for an annulment within 6 months of marriage. I have time to talk to the priest about annulling the church wedding. I'll take my school exams in the next 2 weeks and then discuss everything calmly with my wife. The problem is, I have no idea how to start this discussion with her. Saying, "Hey, I know you're cheating on me," sounds bad. Update. I discussed this with our priest, and apparently he can also call for an annulment. But he wants me to talk to my wife first and let her decide if she wants to stay or not. I'm not sure if I want to let her decide because I don't think I can trust her again. I don't know how to begin this discussion, and while there's never a perfect moment, I'd appreciate any advice on what to say or not say. The priest advised me not to focus on her faults, but to express how my feelings are hurt and how our marriage doesn't feel genuine. Instead of talking about forgiveness, I should discuss my willingness to help her. I need to let her know that I'm aware of her cheating, but without revealing all the details. It might be a good idea to meet with my lawyer first to understand the next steps, especially concerning our jointly rented house, before discussing it with my wife. Update. A lot has happened since my last update. I sought advice on whether to discuss the issue, go for divorce, or seek an annulment, as I shared the details of my conversations with a lawyer. The lawyer mentioned the possibility of requesting an annulment within 6 months of marriage. However, since cheating isn't explicitly mentioned in the law as grounds for annulment, a 100% success guarantee isn't assured. In the worst case, I might opt for a divorce. I also consulted our priest, who stated that, from the church's perspective, I can request an annulment anytime, provided I can prove ongoing cheating before, during, and after the marriage. I have all the evidence required for this. Upon sharing the situation with my friends, they advised me to immediately ask her to leave my home. After gathering necessary information, I had a conversation with my wife 3 weeks ago, which involved tears, some yelling, and subsequent discussions in the following days. We even spent a weekend away to talk things over without distractions. She couldn't explain why she cheated and didn't bring it up earlier out of fear of my reaction. Surprisingly, she claimed she still loved me. I asked her to decide between our marriage and the other guy and to figure out what she'd do to save our relationship. Based on her decision, I would determine whether to give it another shot or not. Initially, I was 90% inclined to leave her, and that feeling should have been 100% after a week. As she couldn't give a clear answer about choosing between me and the other guy, I made the decision for her. If she couldn't decide within 3 months of marriage, I couldn't decide to spend my life with her. 2 weeks ago, we decided to end our relationship. Interestingly, she didn't ask me to stay even once. She seemed sad about my departure, but I believe she was also happy to pursue a relationship with the other guy. I informed my parents and brothers last week, and though they were saddened, they understood it was the best decision for me. She told her parents the same day, and they kicked her out, forcing her to stay with friends. Now she has rented an apartment and is moving her belongings out of my house. In 10 days, I'll meet with the lawyer to request a marriage annulment. I need to update the priest that she moved out and then seek an annulment. At this point, I don't know what else to say. My marriage didn't even last 3 months, and my wife was almost relieved to leave me. I believe there's nothing more to discuss. It will take time to get over this, but I'm gradually adjusting to being alone and managing household tasks. Thank you for your support. Now, I have to restart my life, and hopefully, one day I'll find a girl who genuinely loves me. I'm a 22-year-old woman living with my 26-year-old boyfriend. How can I let him know our relationship is over? We've been together for 4 years and 3 months, sharing a home for almost 3. He's smart, caring, and overall a good person. However, despite these qualities, we have significant issues. First, our bed life is lacking, with closeness occurring only once or twice a month, leading to resentment on my part. I tried various solutions like spicing things up, losing weight, and taking care of myself. Despite getting attention from others, my efforts didn't work, and I've brought up the issue countless times, concluding that we're incompatible. Second, I've always been the main support in our relationship. We moved across the country because his brother lives here, and we wanted to attend college elsewhere. I looked for places to stay. We moved out twice, and both times I took care of everything, from organizing our finances to handling his documents. He had a scholarship requiring specific documents. I assisted him in getting a job, paying for his subscription to an online employment agency, and supported us when he lost his job. He's unaware of our bills and deadlines, and I feel like I have to handle everything. Initially ambitious and curious, he now seems stuck in his comfort zone. Besides the lack of closeness, we don't go on dates or celebrate anniversaries. I don't care about presents, but I wish he'd put effort into making things special, which I've done many times. He blames everything on money, but we live in a touristy city with free public transport, so there's no excuse. He prefers staying home and watching Netflix. I reiterate, there's nothing wrong with that, but we're no longer compatible. I've been contemplating a breakup for over a year, waiting for him to be stable in a job he enjoys. Despite earning less than him now, my family can support me if we break up. He is my primary concern. In his eyes, our relationship is perfect and happy, but I'm miserable. How do I tell him it's over? I've been trying to distance myself, but he doesn't seem to understand. Update. I had a serious talk with him, surprising him as he didn't expect it. Although he nearly begged for another chance, my mind was already made up. It took a few weeks to find a new place, and when I did, I left with only my personal belongings. He kept the apartment and furniture, a price I was willing to pay for my freedom. I spent 7 months single, making friends, exploring new places, and meeting someone special. We've been dating for almost 3 months now, and I couldn't be happier. My ex-boyfriend and I are on good terms, and he still texts me occasionally. He's doing fine. I'm completely worn out. The 2 weeks on the road for the launch of a new international office in London, along with a lot of travel, really took it out of me. The toughest part was being away from my girls, and the 16-hour drive home was incredibly tough. Even in first class, I hate being separated from my family. That's always been the case. However, the lifestyle I've provided for my family makes work challenging. Because of high demand, my energy company has expanded to 12 countries. 5 years ago, I bought out my partner Roger. These past 5 years have been tough but valuable. Now, with a new president in charge, I'm ready to step back and enjoy the success. While I'll remain CEO and owner, I plan to share the good news with my girls once I get home. I'm excited about having more time with my family and friends and returning to a normal routine. Don't get me wrong, I love the growth of my company, but deep down my goal has always been to spend more time watching my girls grow up and being with my wife. I'm happy to have the chance to step back and enjoy the results of my hard work at the age of 45. My life has been stressful, but it's always been filled with love and warmth. I wouldn't change a thing, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter of my life with my family. 30 minutes from home, as my driver navigated through traffic jams, I sat in the back seat of the limo, relaxing and sipping a second glass of bourbon poured from the sidebar after leaving the airport. Approaching the circular driveway, the house seemed quiet, but experience told me that in a few minutes the girls would greet their daddy and my wife would welcome me with a warm kiss, promising a wonderful night in her arms. To my horror, I walked into an empty house. The only sound was the driver placing my bags in the lobby. I called out to them, but there was no response. It was strange. The girls were always home when I returned. Hoping everything was fine, I noticed an envelope with my name, written in my wife Zoe's wonderful handwriting. Jonathan, my love, what an incredible journey we've had as husband and wife. I've cherished every minute of the last 16 years and look forward to the next 50 together. You're my whole world, and I can't live without you. Despite missing you, I've waited to express my gratitude and share something important. The other reason is something I feel a need to share. This is something that has been bothering me for the last 6 months. This is something I never expected, and unfortunately, it has become an important part of my life. Everything you've just read is true, and I speak every word from the bottom of my heart. So what I'm about to tell you is the hardest thing I've ever done. No matter how much I love you and will never stop loving you, I have to confess something. I pray that you will understand and not be disappointed in me and not leave me because of this. I've had a man for the last 6 months. I don't have any feelings or love for this man, but we have a bad relationship. The reason I'm telling you this now is because of respect and a deep sense of guilt. I can't live with this guilt anymore, and I need you to know that I've been unfaithful. You'll never understand it, but I don't feel love for him, just an attraction that I can't explain. He does things to me that I can't put into words, and no matter how hard I try, I can't stop. He has become my drowsiness, and I need him in my life. Please believe that I have done my best to keep this a secret from you and not let it affect our lives. Nothing has changed between us since it started, but I understand that it can't end soon, so it's only fair that you find out all about it. No secrets, baby. I love and respect you too much to ever do that. Please understand that my need for him is purely physical, and I will not allow my being with him to interfere with our love or closeness. I just needed to let you know that there's another part of me that I gave to another man. But this part of me has nothing to do with my love for you and the importance of our family. Family is the most important part of my life and my number one value. Nothing will change that. Our girls are staying the night at your mom's, so don't worry about them. And they can't wait to see their dad in the morning. I'm with my friend tonight because I wanted to give you some time alone to read my letter and figure out how things will go from here. I'll be home around 10 p.m. and we can pick up where we left off, as if nothing has changed. Because nothing has changed. Dear, just remember when you read this that you are the love of my life, and I am yours until pass away do us part. I'm yours, baby, and I'll give you anything you want or need. Thank you for being you and the best husband a girl can dream of. To love always and forever, your devoted wife, Zoe. After finishing the letter, I realized that the glass of bourbon I was drinking had now become part of the next wall. I didn't remember even throwing a glass, let alone throwing it with such force that a few shards actually stuck into the wall. The ability to make quick decisions is what led me to success in business, and now I was acting out of habit. I took out a piece of paper and wrote a reply letter, sealed the envelope on the front of which her name was clearly written, and put it on the table next to the envelope that was addressed to me. I put her letter in my pocket, took some luggage, and went up to the girls' room to pack clothes for a few days. As we had a short trip ahead of us in the car, I called my supervisor and told him to prepare a corporate plane for a trip to San Francisco, where I was going to stay for the near future with my girls. At 6:30 that evening, I was driving to my parents' house to pick up my girls. I keep extra clothes and everything I need for a long stay in a corporate apartment near my California office. When I arrived at my parents' place, the girls ran out with big smiles and gave me a bunch of kisses. They were happy to see me, and it felt like my first real smile since coming home. Dad's back. We missed you, Daddy. We thought we wouldn't see you until tomorrow. Mom said you wouldn't be back until then. She was supposed to meet her friend Jamie tonight, and we came to see Grandma and Grandpa. I hugged and kissed them, tears flowing from the love and the realization that their lives were about to change because of their mom. Jamie's name caught my attention, and I stored it in my memory for a while. After the girls calmed down, I surprised them, saying we were going on a trip for a few days, flying on the company plane for a fun vacation. Convincing the girls was easy, but explaining to Mom and Dad was a different story. They felt my pain and objected until I let them read the letter. I explained I needed time to think and plan without emotions. I left a letter for Zoya and promised to call her from the plane. I assured them I'd be back within 2 weeks, and they shouldn't worry about the girls. They'd be well taken care of. Boarding the plane, the girls played around, and Jessica, a friendly flight attendant, kept them company. We've become good friends over the past 2 years. Alone on flights can create friendships. It was 11 o'clock, and the girls were asleep. The cabin lights dimmed, creating a calm atmosphere. That's when I made a call to Zoe. I informed her of my current location and the potential communication challenges due to the altitude. I reassured Zoe about having received and read her letter, mentioning that the girls were with me and would contact her in the morning. I promised to reach out to her in the next few days and advised her to contact my parents if she needed anything. As the conversation concluded, I wished her a good night. I hung up before she could respond. The flight went smoothly, landing at 1 o'clock. I took the girls to a waiting limo and later went to my house. After putting them to bed, I fell asleep without unpacking. We'll have time for that tomorrow. Jennifer, 13, and Cassie, 15, looked at me curiously after the call. Cassie, the eldest, had a sad look. She inquired if Mom had betrayed me, and her question broke my heart. Holding back tears, I shook my head and instructed them to get dressed for dinner. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I knew with love and support, they'd handle the challenges. Earlier that morning, before the girls woke up, I had a call with George, our family lawyer on the East Coast. I've known him for 20 years and told him the story without any preamble. I conveyed that I needed to understand what a divorce would look like and how challenging it might be. I expressed my desire for custody regardless of the cost and emphasized that there would be no reconciliation, counseling, or forgiveness. I wanted this over as soon as possible. The call went silent, allowing him a moment to absorb the news, probably as surprised as I was when I read Zoe's letter. He expressed his condolences, mentioning how he and Kate thought we were the perfect couple. He couldn't wrap his head around how she could do this. But he understood what I was asking. He reminded me of the prenup that Roger insisted on when we started the company, citing Roger's own experience with infidelity in his previous business. He explained that the prenup was in place and current. If Zoe had truly had an affair, she would give up rights to the kids and any financial benefits from the marriage. Over the years, while the company grew, he had maintained a premarital relationship, worked with our corporate lawyers, and placed most of our assets into a trust. I was the beneficiary, house, cars, bank accounts, investments, all under this untouchable trust. If she breached the marriage contract, she would leave with what she brought in and lose rights to the kids. While we didn't set this up for this situation, it seemed to work in my favor. George, you're right. I never thought she'd betray me. I completely forgot about the prenup. But George, all I have is a letter admitting her infidelity. What else do we need? Well, a confession on video or tape, along with photos or a confession from her partner would help. George, can you handle this while I'm in California with the girls? Money is no issue, and I want proof as soon as possible. I don't want this dragging on. There's a guy my girls mentioned, Jamie. The only Jamie I know is the tennis instructor at our country club. Can you arrange for a private investigator to start with him? I'm sure she'll contact him while I'm away. Of course. Jamie, the tennis instructor, was my sworn enemy. They were careless, making it easier for the private firm to conduct the investigation. With my consent, they placed a tracker on Zoya's car, audio recording devices inside, and video cameras in our house. All evidence was legitimate as my company controlled them through a trust. In a week, they had enough recordings and her written confession to move forward. I never listened or watched. I didn't want these images haunting me. Jamie turned out to be a womanizer, having affairs with other married women. He was younger, fit, and a favorite among the ladies in the club. Zoe was just one of his many affairs there. Middle-aged married women were easy targets for him. George called me 5 days later with updates. Jonathan, we have all the necessary evidence. What do you want us to do? Are you still going to divorce Zoe? Without hesitation, I said, draw up the divorce papers meticulously. I want her to feel the pain she caused me. I'll be at home when she's notified on Tuesday. I want to be there when she gets home. Are you sure about the divorce, Jonathan? Definitely, as we're discussing now. But I need to think about the girls and talk to her before signing the papers. It's tough, George, and I hope you never experience this. I love her, but I can't forgive what she did. Whatever you decide, I'm here to help, Jonathan. Stay in touch, and we'll keep you updated once she's notified. We got home on Tuesday morning around 9 a.m., and the girls were happy to be back. I told them that after their mom finished a tennis lesson, I wanted them to stay in their rooms while we talked. They seemed upset and worried, but I tried my best to assure them that things would be okay. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Even though Zoe was still the girl's mom, I covered the first 3 months of rent for a small, furnished 2-bedroom apartment near our house and the club. I also bought her a 3-year-old Toyota Samga so she could drive. I knew I didn't have to do all this, but I wanted my kids to see their mom whenever they wanted. The fancy cars and luxurious lifestyle were now a thing of the past. She gave up everything for some tennis player she wouldn't see again. Despite everything, I even helped her get a job at the country club. Once I dropped the lawsuit, they agreed to let go of Jamie and assist Zoe with employment. She's no longer a member of the country club, but works as a waitress there to make ends meet. It must have been humiliating for her to go from a club's famous member to one of their waitresses. Jamie had dumped Zoe as soon as the lawsuit started, leaving her with no one to turn to. The girls informed me that their mom cried every night for the love and lifestyle she gave up to satisfy selfish desires. It took all this for her to realize the mistake she made and how foolish it was to think I'd accept her selfish desires. I felt sad about how things turned out and told the girls that I still loved their mom, encouraging them to love and forgive her. They stayed close, visiting her on weekends. Later that year, during one of her visits to pick up the girls, we had our first friendly conversation. She admitted her mistakes and asked for forgiveness. "Jonathan, I know we won't be together anymore and you'll never trust me again, but I want to apologize and beg you to forgive me. I now understand the hurt I caused. I used to be spoiled and didn't care about anyone but myself. I felt entitled and didn't consider how you'd feel. Now I see my mistakes and how much I hurt you. If there was a way to undo it all, I'd do it in a second. Losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I miss you and your love so much that it hurts. I've matured over the last year, and looking back, I can't believe how foolish I was. I'm sorry for ruining everything." My wife, a 37-year-old woman, started a new job 4.5 months ago and made some new friends. I, a 36-year-old man, didn't like her new friends much. They were strong feminists, often seeing themselves as wounded persons and being very socially conscious. They were the kind of women who'd get upset whether you held the door open for them or didn't. It felt like a lose-lose situation. At first I didn't take it seriously, but over the past 2 months, I noticed troubling changes in my wife's behavior. We've been married for 11 years and have 2 children, a 10-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy. Things got progressively worse. She began accusing me of various things, like being inherently evil due to the historical oppression of women by men. It was absurd. I tried to stay patient, but these arguments often ended with me saying something like, "I haven't done anything wrong to you. The only thing I'm guilty of is loving you." It usually left her quiet, but the next day, she'd start the same arguments with different points. Around 5 weeks ago, I had a strong gut feeling that something was seriously wrong. She started coming home late without letting me know, and I couldn't reach her on the phone. She would be distant and cold, even when sober. The next day, she'd dismiss my concerns, accusing me of being controlling and reading too much into things. This happened a few times. I tried to check her phone but couldn't find concrete evidence, although I suspected she'd deleted many messages. I found a conversation with one of her new friends discussing the idea of an open relationship, which confirmed my suspicions of her cheating. My wife said she wanted to discuss this on the second Monday of December, with the kids at their grandparents' for Christmas. We were supposed to join them later, so she brought up the topic over breakfast as if it were a sudden thought, asking about my thoughts on an open relationship. Fortunately, I was prepared. I'd been reading on Reddit and knew there was no saving this marriage. My best outcome was to protect myself and our children. From here on, it was about self-preservation and safeguarding the kids. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked direct questions. She'd been confident until she saw the seriousness on my face. Me. Who is he? She. What do you mean? Me. Don't play dumb. If you want to talk honestly, let's do it. If you can't be honest, what's the point? She. What do you mean, me? Me. If you lie, we can't have this conversation about our relationship. I can tell you're hiding something. So who's the guy you're involved with? She. I'm not. Me. Don't lie. You've shattered my trust. Be honest or we divorce. No arguments, just divorce. Do you understand? She. I understand. She confessed to 2 one-night stands with married men and then revealed she planned to sleep with a colleague from work. She believed it was best for her, and I had no right to control her. I asked about the colleague and got his name and his wife's name. She claimed their relationship was open. She also suggested setting me up with her friends, one of whom was eager. I declined, and I asked for her phone, which she showed me how to unlock. While she was in the bathroom, I locked myself in my office, which panicked her. I used recovery software to find deleted messages and installed a spy app online. When I came out, I gave her the phone and told her to leave. She argued, but I responded with single-word answers. She showed no remorse. Throughout this, she yelled that I was controlling, perpetuating the historical oppression of women, and not truly loving her. Her friends reassured her, saying I wouldn't go through with any threats. One of them shared a story of how she had manipulated her ex-husband using such accusations. I've ordered cameras for my house. Now I know I need to record everything. I couldn't believe what I witnessed. I've never threatened her in any way. After that, she started messaging her affair partner to meet up, and they agreed to meet at a hotel, which left me shocked. I went online to find the AP's wife, and it didn't take long. I reached out to her on Facebook and shared all the details, including what was happening at the hotel. She thanked me and hung up. A few hours later, I received a video from her. She went to the motel and confronted them, yelling. This wasn't the first time her husband had cheated, and she expressed her anger. She recorded my wife getting dressed on the bed, which made me feel sick. The AP's wife even slapped and cursed at my wife. I messaged my wife, telling her I had seen the video and never wanted her near me again. It seems she views our situation as some kind of competition where she believes she's winning. It's hard to understand. It's as if she's disconnected from reality and doesn't realize we're getting a divorce. I joined my wife's family WhatsApp group and informed them about our divorce due to her infidelity. I thanked them for welcoming me into the family and then left the group. I've received calls and messages from her, but I haven't read or responded to them. I just don't have the energy for it. I talked to my parents and shared everything with them. My father messaged my wife that she wouldn't be welcome for Christmas. I'm at my parents' place now and have spoken to my boss, who granted me time off until mid-January to sort things out. I've been monitoring my wife's conversations with her new friends, which have become increasingly frantic. I don't think it has fully dawned on her that she's lost her family and her new friends and the AP don't truly care about her. She has sent me numerous messages and even showed up at my parents' house demanding to celebrate Christmas with us. My father threatened to call the police if she didn't leave. Now I'm searching for divorce lawyers and shedding tears. The pain hit me hard once I arrived at my parents' house. It's all so confusing. Reading their chats and interacting with her brings me immense pain. I've only responded to her messages twice. Me. It doesn't matter what you say. I don't know who you are. You are not my wife. My wife would never break my heart and soul while smiling. We're getting a divorce, and I don't care about your words or demands. You have no influence or right to ask anything of me. We're done. You, whoever you are, seem proud of what you've done. Her messages stopped after that last one. The pain is sometimes unbearable. I wish this never happened. I wish I could go back to how things were before, but I can't do that to myself. This is the worst Christmas ever. I couldn't help but explain to the kids that Mommy doesn't want to be part of the family anymore, and she wants to be with other men. We're getting a divorce, and they're naturally upset. Thankfully, my mom and dad are here to comfort them while I'm falling apart. I'll try to get back on my feet for the sake of my kids, but I'll never go back to her. I wish I had waited until after Christmas to get them into counseling. I blurted it out when they asked about when their mother would come. I could never forgive myself if I went back to her. The level of disrespect and heartlessness in her behavior is unforgivable. I'm lost and can't understand why she expects anything from me at this point. Is she mentally ill or something? I apologize for the rambling. I just needed to get this off my chest. What ultimately got to me was when my soon-to-be ex-wife used harsh language to describe how our marriage, and particularly our children, were a burden in her life. She claimed they held her back from being a successful woman who could reach her full potential. She also blamed me, her husband, for oppressing her and preventing her from having a good life. She even said that her family was the reason she didn't have a successful career and had missed out on casual experiences. It was too much for me to handle. For the next roughly 30 hours, I kept reading and rereading all the emails and chats we'd had. Upon reflection, I realized she didn't provide any specific examples of how we were supposedly burdens or oppressors. It was all broad statements without any supporting arguments or instances. In reality, I had never stopped her from pursuing anything. I financially supported almost everything, as her part-time job's minimum wage wouldn't cover much. I had also supported her hobbies, dreams, and aspirations. Even when she took classes and quit them halfway through, I made sure to express my love for her daily and appreciate her contributions to the family. I'd take her out and be there for her whenever she needed me. If this is oppression, then I'd like to experience it, please. But I digress. At some point, while reading, I just passed out. When I woke up, my 3 best friends were in the kitchen with my dad preparing dinner. I've known these guys since childhood. Let's call them Mike, Bob, and Frank. My dad had briefed them on the situation. I broke down again, and I was in a daze until Friday evening. Mike is a military veteran who lost his left arm below the elbow. We supported him during his recovery when his wife left him. Fortunately, they didn't have any children, and Mike later adopted 2 kids and found a wonderful girlfriend. He set up a Zoom call with his counselor, who helped him during his recovery. His insights into my emotional state, even though he specialized in helping amputees, were incredibly helpful. He explained that a significant part of my identity and spiritual self was tied to my role as a husband, and now that part was dead. Similar to an amputee experiencing phantom pain in a missing limb, I would feel phantom pain from the dead part of my identity. We had extensive conversations, and I've been gradually improving since. Bob is an executive at a security company, but he's secretive about his job. I don't know what he does, but he's quite wealthy. Bob contacted a law firm connected to his company, and on Sunday morning I talked to a lawyer I could never afford on my own. Bob, who had been bullied a lot in his youth, assured me not to worry about the legal bill. He would cover it. He was glad to finally repay me for standing up for him when he was bullied. Frank is a teacher at a private school and has 7 children. Yes, you read that right. 7. My kids adore him and his family. Frank has been ensuring my kids are well taken care of while I regain my footing and get everything in order. Yesterday was a very eventful day. It began with an early morning STD screening, which revealed that I had contracted chlamydia from my soon-to-be ex-wife. I'll need another screening in 6 months. My self-pity turned into pure anger upon learning this. I've decided it's time to go all out for full custody and to provide her with nothing if I can manage it. My lawyer managed to locate the ex-husband of my wife's feminist friend, who bragged about how she had deceived him. It turned out to be relatively easy through court documents. Talking to him on WhatsApp, he expressed his gratitude and shared the horrors he had endured because of this woman. Now I have a better idea of what to expect from my soon-to-be ex-wife. It was sickening to hear about the experiences he had been through. I'm now ready for a battle after our conversation, preparing for a legal war. I was deeply saddened by his story, as he had been homeless and hadn't seen his kids for 4 years due to his ex-wife's lies. I understand that I'm at a disadvantage as a man in the court system, so I'll ensure I have a mountain of evidence. My lawyer suggested a preemptive move with a restraining order, given her negative and aggressive comments about males in general, especially for the sake of our son. Growing up in a household with a parent openly hostile toward males is undeniably damaging, which is why I'm pursuing full custody. I've informed my lawyer to proceed, and she's expecting to serve the restraining order. Today, I had a Zoom call with my soon-to-be ex-wife. Keep in mind that she hasn't reached out to me or anyone since the argument at my dad's house. It's clear she doesn't care about any of us. The call was incredibly strange. She had dolled up with a revealing outfit, trying to look her absolute best. I haven't seen her make such an effort in years. Throughout our conversation, she attempted to provoke me into an argument, but I managed to stay composed. My lawyer had given me guidance on what to discuss. It's considered positive if both parties make an effort for an amicable divorce before going for a contested one. I was recording the conversation, and I even referred to her as my soon-to-be ex-wife, which she lived up to. She started with a bizarre statement about different types of male anatomy, discussing how they change when erect or not. I couldn't believe she began a conversation with such a topic. Then she mentioned her excitement about the end of current restrictions to explore this further in person. I responded by saying I wasn't interested in her hobbies and that I wanted to focus on our divorce. Her hostility became evident when I didn't react as she had hoped. At one point, she claimed to be going to the bathroom and muted herself. I observed as she discussed what to do with me with her friends, cursing me solely because I'm a man. Several times during the call, I had a strange feeling that she treated this as a game, where she was in control, and I had no choice but to go along with whatever she wanted. We made no progress on our divorce, so I concluded that we were heading for a contested divorce. By the way, I contracted chlamydia from you, and unlike you, I haven't been involved with anyone else. You should get yourself to a clinic." She frowned at me, not believing my words. I have no idea what's going on with her, and at this point, I no longer care. I shared the recording with my lawyer, and she was quite surprised. Everyone thinks my wife's behavior is irrational, and perhaps it is. Since I own her phone and the subscription, I can use the chat logs in court. It's entirely legal for me to monitor my own device. After our call, there was a frantic discussion among her friends, but I no longer care about what they discuss. My lawyer is confident that we'll win this case unless there's something I haven't disclosed. So here we are. It still hurts, but I can see it as phantom pain. I've stopped feeling sorry for myself and am now taking a proactive approach. No holds barred. I need to protect myself and my kids. I'm confident that my kids will be fine, and I'll ensure they get therapy as needed. My soon-to-be ex-wife will soon be a distant memory, and I'll start building a new and better life. Today, I found out that she was aware of the chlamydia infection and received treatment, but didn't inform me. It's quite frustrating. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their feedback. Some people see me as strong or somehow winning in this situation, but I can see that my anger shines through when I may seem defiant and confident. The truth is, I'm not. I wish this had never happened. I wish my family was still intact, and I had a simple, comfortable life ahead with my wife. No one is a winner here as the kids grow and begin their own lives. My wife's behavior has left me no choice, and there's no turning back at this point. I desperately wish this situation hadn't been necessary. I can never trust her again, and every night I cry myself to sleep, both for my own loss and the fact that my children will grow up in a broken home. It's also heartbreaking that my children no longer have a functional relationship with their mother. How do you answer a child's question like, "Why doesn't mommy want to see me anymore? Doesn't she love me?" If anyone has an answer, please let me know, because I certainly don't. Every day, I wake up and tell myself that my heart is already broken into so many pieces that it can't possibly break any further, only to be proven wrong daily. My wife still doesn't know that I can monitor her communications, or she doesn't care. She is 100% convinced that I will never leave her, and that my reaction to her behavior is entirely unjustified. She continues to speak negatively about me, our marriage, and our children to her friends. I don't understand why she despises us so much. We haven't done any of the things she accuses us of doing to her friends. As I mentioned earlier, my lawyer obtained a temporary restraining order against her. There was a hearing yesterday morning, and since there were no new direct threats, it wasn't extended. My lawyer suggested using her knowingly infecting me with chlamydia as leverage to try to negotiate an uncontested divorce. I wish we could part ways through a reasonable process. I hate that I have to see her as an adversary and anticipate the worst possible outcome. If she wanted to leave me, I would have been able to accept it. Why is she pushing me into this highly adversarial process? Why does she seem determined to cause as much misuse as possible to the people who once cared about her? What could she possibly gain from all this? I would appreciate any insights into this, as it just doesn't make sense to me. If we end up in court, I might have to pay her a lump sum for our house's equity, but I probably won't be responsible for alimony. Since she doesn't show any interest in the kids, I'm hopeful about winning custody if it goes to court. My lawyer suggested we try to achieve an amicable divorce, and I agreed. We plan to meet with my soon-to-be ex-wife and her representative, hopefully this week. The ex-husband who was deceived by the dishonest person spent New Year's Eve with me and the kids. The injustice within the justice system against fathers is simply unbelievable. I no longer have any illusions about receiving a fair process if we go to court. His ex lied extensively, and the court took her word as fact without any evidence. He has barely seen his children since. He's been forced to pay unreasonable amounts of alimony and child support, which has taken a toll on him. He even considered ending his life. With the new evidence he received from me, he now has renewed hope. We both discussed it with my lawyer, and she recommended that he hold on to the evidence until the meeting with my wife and her counsel. If he takes action now, it will reveal that we have access to their communications. My lawyer's primary goal is to facilitate our divorce as quickly and smoothly as possible. Right now, I simply hope I can distance myself from my soon-to-be ex-wife. If she decides to fight, it could drag on for a long time, and it's causing me a lot of stress. I just need to break free. Unfortunately, the bizarre situation continues. The meeting with my lawyer and my soon-to-be ex-wife took place yesterday afternoon, but she arrived 30 minutes late. Surprisingly, she didn't bring a lawyer and insisted she didn't have or need one. Instead, she brought one of her new acquaintances. My lawyer had given me strict instructions on how to conduct myself, emphasizing that I should avoid negative reactions. If they addressed me, I was to respond non-confrontationally or positively, if possible. When my lawyer placed her hands flat on the table, I had to remain silent. However, they arrived late, without wearing masks, and the harpy attempted to insult and provoke me in various ways, followed by my soon-to-be ex-wife joining in. My lawyer tried to steer the conversation towards our divorce, but they continued with their jokes and laughter, often aimed at me. It was cringeworthy to witness. It's clear now that my wife still believes this is all a ploy, thinking there's no way I can divorce her. In her mind, only she can initiate a divorce, and she assumes she'll get everything she wants. I was left wondering what on earth was happening. I refrained from saying anything substantial and only responded a few times with non-committal statements like, "Yes, you're probably right," or "I really don't know." Finally, they seemed to lose their steam. My lawyer presented the proposed settlement for an amicable divorce, mentioning my willingness to be generous for a quick and peaceful resolution, including a substantial lump sum for equity in the house and investments. My soon-to-be ex-wife couldn't contain her excitement, and her harpy friend encouraged her. They were eager to sign immediately. My lawyer, on the other hand, repeatedly suggested going over the rest of the agreement, but my soon-to-be ex-wife was adamant about signing right away, even discussing when she'd receive the money and their plans for the pub. My lawyer made a call, and a notary arrived, asking for our identification documents. We signed 2 copies, and the notary stamped them. My lawyer, almost figuratively standing on her head with the excitement, thanked my soon-to-be ex-wife and her friend, and informed them that we were done. They left, and my wife even forgot her copy of the agreement on the table. My lawyer signaled with flat hands not to say anything while they were in the building. Once we saw them leaving the parking lot, my lawyer congratulated me. She went on to describe how this had been the most peculiar session she had ever experienced for a negotiated divorce. She explained that my soon-to-be ex-wife's copy of the agreement would be sent to her after we had a hearing in front of the judge, or if she hired a lawyer who requested it. Until then, it would remain forgotten in my lawyer's drawer. So it seems, on the surface, that my divorce will be less challenging than initially anticipated. However, my soon-to-be ex-wife can still retain legal representation and contest it. My lawyer assured me she would do her best to expedite a hearing with a judge. It would likely be a video call. I also hired a private investigator after receiving advice on Reddit. He provided photos of my wife kissing 2 different men at different bars and going to a hotel with one of them. I have accumulated substantial evidence, and I hope it will suffice if needed. My wife signed to grant me full custody with a one-time payment and no spousal support. I just need to figure out the finances. I have a plan, and Bob offered to fund the entire amount if necessary. My lawyer advised me to keep a low profile, continue paying for everything as usual, and avoid stirring the plant in any way. I'm advised not to communicate with anyone we both know and to remain patient until the hearing. Yesterday was the hearing, and I'm essentially divorced. It will take 4 to 6 months for the paperwork to be officially processed, but the outcome is unlikely to change at this point. The only option for a reversal would be if both my wife and I decided to halt the process. I'm utterly exhausted and haven't slept in days. Please forgive me if I seem a bit scattered. I need to get this off my chest. Maybe I can finally get some sleep after sharing it. My exceptional lawyer secured an early hearing just 12 days after we filed the paperwork, probably by pulling some strings. But let me stay focused on the recent events. From the weekend up until today, it's been chaos. On Friday morning, a group of police officers arrived at my doorstep with a search warrant for my house. I was bewildered and concerned for the kids, so I asked if I could take them outside while they conducted their search, which they agreed to. They didn't provide many details, but I managed to obtain a copy of the warrant. I was quite shaken and couldn't make much sense of it. It appears that the suspicions about my ex-wife's behavior being medication-related are partially correct. The police officers ended up ransacking my house. I contacted my lawyer and she spoke to them, but since the warrant was valid, there was little we could do. It didn't occur to me then, but now I have surveillance cameras installed everywhere to protect against potential false accusations. I have video and audio recordings of everything. If I choose to, I might be able to file a claim later. However, I'm not sure if I have the energy or willingness to do so. Perhaps I'll put it behind me and move on. I didn't know at the time, but my ex and her 3 friends drove my car while intoxicated and crashed into a house at high speed. They were all arrested, all found to be intoxicated, and they had various medications in and on their bodies. They suffered injuries in the crash, with the passenger in critical condition, and there are doubts about her survival. The lead friend, whom I'll call Henrietta, is the one who bragged about deceiving her ex-husband, Jack. Jack and I have become good friends, and I'll get back to him. Fortunately, the police didn't find anything during their search. I provided a statement indicating that my ex no longer resides at my house. She lives with her parents. I'm uncertain about her current activities. No, I didn't give Henrietta permission to use my car. Upon returning to my house, I broke down. It was utterly devastated and in disarray. It was the final straw. The only thought that crossed my mind was to call my dad, who brought me and the kids to stay with my mom. My dad rallied a group of 26 friends and family members who cleaned and repaired my entire house while I sat on the back porch, emotionally drained, consuming my mom's comforting food. They restored everything, from every room to clothes, dishes, furniture, even addressing minor issues like loose door handles. It's now the cleanest it has ever been. They went above and beyond for me, and I'm not sure how I can ever repay their kindness. Over the weekend, I shifted from despair to feeling much better, thanks to them. The cops discovered more medication at Henrietta's house, where her boyfriend wasn't present. There was no babysitter either, just the kids left unattended. Child Protective Services, CPS, intervened, and Jack won temporary emergency custody on Saturday. He presented chat logs to the judge, along with evidence of abandonment and an excessive amount of medications, leading to him gaining custody without much difficulty. Jack is ecstatic. He had seen very little of his children over the past 5 years. He had been raising funds to fight Henrietta in court when this situation unfolded. To make the custody permanent, he still has to go through a court process, but the children are in good hands at this point. Many believe that Henrietta will face significant jail time if her critically injured friend doesn't survive. Afterward, Jack plans to pursue child support and compensation for Henrietta's actions, although he isn't overly optimistic about the latter. He mainly wants to be with his kids and ensure they have a good life, as it's evident that Henrietta has been negligent in caring for them. Bob has been supportive and found a rental apartment for Jack through a friend. I've realized that I know very little about Bob's personal and professional life, and I intend to rectify that. But let me get back on track. Henrietta was driving when they veered off the road and crashed into a house. They were all injured, and search warrants for drink and medication were issued for everyone in the vehicle. X is still registered at my house, and on Sunday, I decided that I'm selling the house and moving away as soon as possible. I fear a similar incident could occur again. Last Sunday, her parents called me. They told me that their house was searched as well. They had visited their daughter in jail on Saturday, and they no longer trust anything she tells them. To cut a long story short, they came over to talk on Sunday, and it turns out she has been lying to them about everything. She has been going out to party and cheating on me, despite telling her parents that she was staying with me to work things out. Her parents were unaware of what was really happening, thinking her cheating was just a one-time mistake. That's pretty much what she told them. On Monday, my wife called me to ask for bail money, which was $15,000. Her parents had already refused to help. After consulting with my lawyer, she drew up an agreement that the bail amount would be deducted from the final settlement, with her mother as the custodian of the remaining money. My lawyer wanted to ensure my wife had no excuse for missing the court hearing. So, my ex didn't have much choice and signed the agreement. She was released on Monday afternoon. According to her parents, she didn't comply with their conditions for her to continue living with them, which included stopping medication, committing to rehab, being open about her activities, and dropping her bad friends. She apparently left their house on Tuesday to stay with some new friends. She also missed the court hearing, and I was awarded full custody. The settlement was based on our agreement and was completed in just 30 minutes. It'll take 4 to 6 months for all the paperwork to be processed, but in reality, it's a done deal. There's not much that can be done to change it. Now, let's fast forward to today. I couldn't sleep. Everyone congratulated me as if I had won a major victory, but it doesn't feel that way at all. I still love my wife, even though I know our relationship is over. She used to be my best friend and soulmate until recently. Even though my love for her has been severely damaged, it's still there and it hurts a lot. There are no winners here. I lose, my wife loses, and my kids lose. It's hard to find the right words. It's like being asked to celebrate after losing both of my legs. People congratulate me as if I've saved half a kneecap while losing both legs. So I can't sleep, and when I do, I'm plagued by terrible nightmares that wake me up covered in sweat. I'm venting a bit here. Apologies for that. Anyway, today I got a call from the hospital that my ex is hospitalized. I'm still her emergency contact, and she's still on my health insurance. There was an incident, and she lost some teeth, broke her jaw, and will need to stay under observation for a few days. I brought her parents to the hospital, and it turns out some of her new friends had severely beaten her up. The reason was that they believed my wife had shared chat logs from her phone with a guy named Jack, exposing her actions. They assumed she had given the logs to Jack, which led to the beating. She still doesn't realize that I can monitor her phone. I'll continue supporting her financially until I have the legal papers in my hand. I just can't believe it until I see it. Right now, she has nothing. She asked if she could move back home, but I firmly said no. Her mother won't give her a penny unless she gets clean and stays clean for at least a year. They offered her a place to live under strict conditions, and if she doesn't accept, I don't see how she'll manage. For the first time, I saw a hint of regret in her since this all began, but I doubt it's genuine. She hardly looked me in the eye during our meeting. It pained me to see her like this, and I felt the urge to protect her. But she's an adult. Her behavior is dangerous, and I need to protect my kids. She didn't ask about the court hearing or her injured friend's condition. She seemed annoyed and disconnected. I still can't understand her actions. She has lost everything, destroyed her family, and caused pain for many people, all for a fleeting high and casual closeness. I'll maintain no contact with her until she's been clean for a substantial period. I can't handle all this chaos. I'm feeling somewhat depressed and extremely tired. I hardly get any sleep, and when I do, I'm plagued by nightmares. The good news is that the kids are doing better. My dad has been a huge help, and I can't imagine what I'd do without him. We went to his cabin this weekend for some skiing with the kids. It was a great break. I have minimal contact with my ex. I did have a conversation with one of her friends, the one who was in critical condition. She's awake now, but in bad shape. Her nurse told me that no one had visited her during her stay. Her family even refused to see her when contacted. I'm concerned that the people who attacked my ex might come after me and the kids. So, I asked the nurse if I could speak to her, and she agreed. I know I probably shouldn't, but I felt the need to ask her about what had happened since my wife got involved with them. She started by asking if I wanted a closeness favor for $20, which was quite awkward. I offered her $50 in exchange for information. My wife's new friends are all heavy medicament users. Henrietta convinced my wife to try medicaments and party with them, selling closeness favors to fund their weakness. Henrietta was the ringleader in this group. They preach feminist ideals, but, as she put it, it's all a facade to protect their egos. In reality, they're selling themselves for medicament money. My wife got caught up in this lifestyle and soon started selling closeness to support her own medicament habit. It's tough to hear that the person I loved had turned to this to feed her weakness. It explains why money seemed to be her top priority. Now, based on what she's told me, it's mostly meth that she's using. Nobody visited her because she has stolen, cheated, mistreated, and lied to everyone in her life, so nobody wants anything to do with her. She told me, without any hesitation, how sad she was to have survived. She has no hope for the future, and she looks extremely unhealthy without her makeup. It was painful, and I was devastated just listening to her. I cried a lot. For the sake of my wife, I'm not making excuses for her. She chose to get involved in this damaging stuff, and now she'll have to face the consequences. I'll get back to the details about the guys who assaulted my ex-wife later. Henrietta is facing a list of charges, including making pass-away threats, resisting arrest, possessing medicaments, engaging in prostitution, trafficking medicaments, neglect, driving under the influence, causing property damage, and stealing a vehicle. She's been denied bail due to the risk of her fleeing, and it's likely that she'll be in legal trouble for a while. At least I hope so. Before I continue, I want to express my gratitude to those of you who shared your experiences dealing with dependency. Many of you warned me that my ex might attempt self-misuse now that things are closing in on her, and you were right. She tried to intentionally overdose. I had discussed this possibility with her father, so we decided to keep a close watch on her. Fortunately, she still doesn't know that I have real-time access to her phone. While we were at the cabin on Saturday, I received a message from her that sounded like a pass-away note. She talked about her weakness, prostitution, letting everyone down, and how she felt like she had no other choice. I immediately called her father, and since I could monitor her location, he rushed out to find her unconscious on a park bench. She was taken to the hospital and treated. She was also severely hypothermic. I hate to think about what might have happened if he had arrived just a bit later. She's now on methadone. Her father has been appointed as her legal guardian. She can't object to treatment anymore. Her father had her forcibly admitted to a rehab center, and she will undergo a sedated detox. I'm not sure when, but probably this week. Her father's appointment is not solely due to her overdose, but because she abandoned her children, which apparently indicates she's not thinking rationally as she tries to end her life. That's the legal reasoning. Thankfully, I haven't canceled her life insurance yet, so she will receive treatment. I've offered to help with the financial side, as long as my ex isn't aware that it's coming from me. I've been concerned that the men who assaulted my wife might come after me and the kids. Remember that Jack presented chat logs in court, which they believed my wife had given him. I talked to Jack about this, and he decided to take care of it, since he benefited from the disclosure. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Jack is a big, imposing guy. He went to the guy's apartment, which was a real dump, by the way. He confronted them and told them that Henrietta had provided him with the chat logs, and since they had misused someone he knew, they had a choice to make. Go to the police and confess everything about the assault, or face the consequences right there, which would involve some painful and permanent injuries if they chose the second option. As he described it to me, he made it clear that he hoped they would go with the first choice. They apparently wasted no time heading to the police. Needless to say, I no longer worry about them. I found a new apartment, and I'll be moving soon. Once again, Bob came through for me. All in all, I'm very downcast. This situation weighs heavily on my mind. What keeps me going is the support of my friends and family, and I know I need to stay strong for the kids. My heart aches for my ex. Despite everything, I don't regret marrying her. I still love her, but I realize we can never be together again. She's not the person she used to be, and there's too much pain between us. Despite all the recent hardships, we had a good life before that. I wouldn't have my children if it weren't for her, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. I know the pain will linger for a long time. Strangely enough, the news of my wife's weakness has made it easier for my kids to understand. It's simpler to explain that mommy is sick, and it will take time for her to get better. She still loves them, and so on. Right now, I'm feeling sad and tired. Jack is here with his kids, and we're going to watch Madagascar 3. I think I'm trying to create as many positive memories as possible. Jack is doing the same, and his kids, along with mine, seem to be doing much better now. I believe we'll be okay. I believe my ex passed away from an overdose while in rehab. We're not sure how she got access to the medicaments, but she must have taken them while inside, and it seems something went terribly wrong. Substance dependency is a real issue, and it's truly heartbreaking. Seek support from your family if needed, and focus on taking care of your children. The current situation is distressing, but it will get better. Remember that your children need you more than ever, and your in-laws are going through even greater pain than you. Best of luck, and stay strong.